I think the longest we've ever been is 7. And I think that was for the finale of season 1. It was
Season
7
2.
hours. Season 2?
Mm-hmm. It was the season 2 finale because it was a 2-hour finale that we didn't decide was going to be a 2-hour finale until partway through the discussion.
Yeah.
So that's why it took 7 hours.
Yeah.
Let's never do that again.
Yeah. And your wallet. Handing. Long distance handing. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hello, Internet. So this is season 4, episode 5 of the SilmFilm project script discussion. If you don't know what that is, go home. I can't help you.
There'll be a link in the description, right? Like you at least have something to say.
Yeah, I don't put descriptions in anymore for these. Usually, if somebody knows what it is, they know what it is. If they don't know what it is, that
yeah, I understand.
So, in this episode, we've got a lot of entertainment happening. But one would hope. So, what is this episode about anyway?
This is the Marath Atterthod, which is the Feast of Reuniting. So Fingolfin has planned it, and Fingon is hosting in Navrost. So this entire episode will take place in Vinyamar. We have a large cast of characters because pretty much everyone got invited, and a lot of people showed up.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of the feast from Fingolfin's point of view is to get all the Noldor together in one place to kind of reestablish contact. It's been 15 years since they went their separate ways, to involve the Sindar in their growing alliances, and kind of just get everybody to cooperate with each other to establish the new realms of Galarian. The side effect of all this is that the Sindar have been fairly positive towards the Noldor up to this point, but during this episode, we should see some splits where the Noldor are just not talking about certain things and not answering questions and avoiding topics that confuse the Sindar. They don't understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of active suspicion, but there is a little bit of a reaction to that, which is obviously the opposite of what Fingolfin's going for.
Mm-hmm.
Sauron and Thuringwethel are in attendance disguised as elves. They can be either Noldor or Sindar, depending on the scene, because they can just switch costumes and present themselves as somebody else, depending on their goals. And their goal is to disrupt. So they are attempting to sow suspicion among the Sindar, start fights among the Noldor, and in general, ruin the party. That's and they are using subtle spy techniques as well as actual magic, with Sauron using music as a spell to create this unrest. And there's a pretty significant subplot with Galadriel and Celeborn. Their friendship up to this point has been fairly subdued or understated. Like, they've met, they've talked, they care about each other, but not much more than that. And in this episode, we're going to see their relationship develop, essentially, where her trust for him is enough that she can divulge the death of her mother and the details of the kinslife.
Right.
So those are the main things that are happening. There's obviously a bunch of minor things happening as well in the background. Meryl and Orodreth meet and dance together and make lovey-dovey eyes at each other. I don't know how far we want to go with that, but that is a subplot, a background subplot. Who attends and what their thoughts are and how they get along with each other is also depends how much we want to show and how much cultural showcasing we want to do of the singing and the dancing and the feasting of the Sindar and Noldor combined.
Okay.
One of the things I remember from the podcast was they talked about when Sauron does his singing or music thing, trying to like sow discord, is Luthien is going to step up and start singing or dancing or something to counterspell. But not consciously counterspelling, but realizing that there's problems going on, so she's going to sing a song and everyone's going to get along after that.
Exactly. So Sauron is going around starting fires, and Luthien is going around putting out fires, and neither of them understands why this is a continual problem. Sauron doesn't understand why he can't make things progress to the next step, and Luthien doesn't understand why fires keep breaking out. So neither of them is aware of the other's activity explicitly, but they are in conflict throughout the episode.
So would we say that the conflict between Luthien and Sauron is the A plot of the episode then?
Probably. I don't know if we want to make it Galadriel-centric or Luthien-centric, to be honest.
Right.
But Galadriel has nothing to do with Sauron's subplot, which seems significant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what I would say is making Luthien versus Sauron the A plot, having the B plot be Celeborn and Galadriel, which those two are going to be close to each other, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, they'll be overlapping.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is that like these people are arriving together, essentially.
Right.
So, Galadriel.
So when is Galadriel going to tell Celeborn about like the kinslaying and everything? Has that already happened, or is that going to happen this episode or the episode after?
That's going to happen in this. This is going to happen in this episode, probably in the final act, I would say.
Okay.
Yes. So sometime during the episode, which we can determine, she will bring up the death of her mother, and he will respond in a sympathetic way to that, where she has established trust with him, and then at the end, she will divulge the scenario surrounding the death of her mother, so that he understands a little bit about where her grief is coming from, that it's not just that her mom died, it's that there's her entire people slaughtered her mother's people. Like there was a thing and she was there, and there, So he will learn of the kinslaying through the lens of Galadriel's memories. So instead of just being horrified that it happened, he's invested in her personal conflict over it.
Although there should be a certain amount of horror.
Of course. It's just that we're going to see a very different reaction from Thingol and the rest of Doriath when the news comes out. And so here we see, yes, the horror of, oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened. But also and you were there and you lived through it and you had to witness that, how horrible for you, is a pretty strong undercurrent to Celeborn's reaction to her.
Okay. So where does the rest of the cast kind of fit into all this? Because obviously we've kind of discussed having Dairon and Maglor getting involved in the final confrontation. Well, confrontation, but the confrontation without confronting Sauron.
Right. So it's a party. So we can have lots of disjointed scenes going back and forth between different groups of people. The Feanorians probably only sent Maedhros and Maglor to this party, so they're underrepresented here. The Green Elves sent Celeborn's sister, so she'll be there, and she can interact with Celeborn in part of his plotline.
Do we have a name for her yet?
We have like 15 suggested names for her, so I don't know which one we're going with. We'll have to figure that out at some point. So just keep calling her Celeborn's sister, but it's an easy way to identify who she is.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. The so and so's sister, so and so's wife thing is getting a little old.
Yeah. So we did have a few suggestions. Everyone in Celeborn's family tends to have a name that sounds something like Silvertree, so we were thinking about. There's a few options there, or there's a few names of green elves that we know about. that Tolkien came up with that don't fit that pattern, so we could go with one of those names until someone tosses those all at the hosts. We don't really have a name.
Yep. Okay.
But yeah, she can be here and tied into the Celeborn Galadriel side plot.
Okay. So basically, I'm just trying to decide whether, or try to reach a decision as to whether or not there is a C plot in here.
Or if everyone in the C plot ties into everything else.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that it is like
the C plot would be Fingolfin and the Noldor trying to hide the kinslaying from the Sindar guests.
Okay, so
essentially,
maybe,
the Noldor keeping their secrets.
Círdan is there. Fingolfin is there. Círdan's coming away from this more suspicious than he was before.
Yes. So Thuringwethel's tack, because Sauron's actually doing magical disruption stuff. Thuringwethel is just doing the starting misleading conversations kind of thing. And she's been trying to get the Sindar to be suspicious of the Noldor. And for the most part, they're not.
Right.
But Círdan is. Like, that's what is distinctive about him. Is
I wonder if there's going to be any points where there's like a Noldo standing there in conversation with Thuringwethel or Sauron as Noldo, with them like kind of hinting at there being a secret, and then kind of giving him or her a look of, dude, will you be cool? What are you doing?
Yeah. I think that something like that would probably be good. And we don't want it to be so blatantly over the top that it becomes like this cheesy spy movie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Thuringwethel knows there's a secret.
Yeah.
So that's her card to play, of hint at the secret until somebody gives something away.
Right.
Or until the Sindar get suspicious enough to ask more leading questions themselves.
Yeah. All right. So
something else that we might be able to do this episode is give Sauron or Thuringwethel a reason to go after Angwad's wife, because she's one of the ones that's going to get kidnapped. So, like, if she's the one who, like, says something that makes them really suspicious, or says something that most closely hints at the kinslaying, so they're like, this woman knows what the secret is, we should get her. If, like, she can do something to unintentionally make herself a target during the feast, that would explain, like, why she gets captured.
Yes, I agree that having her get singled out as a target should happen now, because that'll happen either next episode or possibly episode 7, but probably 6. So somewhere in 6 or 7, she gets kidnapped, and there has to be a reason for it. And
okay. Also, I think that we could probably take this opportunity to introduce Anael as well. We thought about doing it last episode, but we didn't really.
He was the one on the picnic, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's right. We did.
He's been introduced.
We can reinforce him,
He
though.
could be doing the catering for the feast. He comes in with a picnic basket.
Right. Like, there's a couple characters who should be on screen in the background that definitely need to be in the background in this episode. Rog and Anael are both those kind of characters. Yeah. They might not do anything specifically to call attention to them, but they should be there so that later on they are. The characters that we do need to introduce a little bit more explicitly are Glorfindel and Ithilien. They're Turgon's main guys. This is Turgon's hosting job right here. So they're probably very actively involved in planning this feast and in making sure everyone's getting along. So we can work them into the plots that Sauron and Thuringwethel are doing, obviously in the role of trying to stop all of that. I don't think we're going to be able to do anything with the fact that Ithilien is the one who's going to kill Gothmog, and Sauron's main rival is Gothmog. Like, it would be cool if we could work something in between Ithilien and Sauron that was significant later, but I think it would be too difficult to make anything happen there.
Okay. I have some questions. One, in the Celeborn Galadriel plotline, Do we feel like Celeborn is more the protagonist there, since he has the most agency in that situation?
She's the one revealing truths.
Yeah,
and that is
he's
her
the one who makes
decision.
a decision as to what to do with that information.
Right, but are we going to see that this episode?
Well, he's got to react to it.
That's true.
Unless we do it as like a cliffhanger, like he finds it like at the tail end of the episode, and he finds out, and we just get a shot of his horror-stricken face.
I don't think we want to start the next episode in Myanmar, so we probably don't want to do it that way.
Right.
So you're right. We would get his reaction, and he would thank her for her confidence and reassure her that he'll keep this between the two of them. Right. I suppose.
Well, we'll probably do the thing where like he gets the revelation, he looks appropriately horrified, and then we cut to another
scene
set of characters, and then we come back to them, and we get the resolution to that.
Yeah. Okay.
That strikes me as the bookend of the final act.
Yeah. So, exactly.
So let's switch tacks real quick and talk frame for a second here.
Oh no.
Yeah. The good news is we really only need a couple of scenes from the frame. We don't have to worry too much about it.
The second piece of good news is we know where we're set up with it, because we ended the frame last time with the arrival of the elves, and therefore we have the arrival of the elves.
Yep. And I'm sure there's going to be a big party.
Right. And this will be an opportunity to have Celeborn's sister in both the frame and in the main storyline in the same episode, which would be kind of a cool connection.
Yep.
So I think that if we're going to have a scene between her and Thranduil, this would be the episode to do it.
Have we had her in it? I don't remember now. This is the first time.
This will be her introduction. So the question is, do we introduce her in the main story or in the frame?
Well, we should introduce her in the frame first, so that we know that when
we see her, it's like, oh my gosh, it's you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So so she needs to be in the opening frame sequence, I think, or at least we could do it that way.
Yeah.
And
we can easily have Gandalf drop a line about your brother Lord Celeborn sends his greetings because he must have had a meeting of the White Council sometime in the recent past, of course, because they meet super regularly.
Even if they don't meet all that regularly, he's probably seen Celeborn more recently than Celeborn and the sister have seen each other.
Yes.
So Gandalf being a traveler and neither of them being travelers,
he
would convey greetings between them. And I'll totally tell Celeborn next time I see him that you say hi, even if it's like 5 years from now.
Yeah. and he is a member of a super secret running everything Illuminati organization.
Yeah. Let's not characterize the White Council that way.
I mean, a lot of the discussions they have are very like they really are kind of the moving hand behind everything that's happening in the north of Middle-earth.
In a sense, yes. I'm not saying there's no connection
to the necromancer,
right,
and and all that, but
right, and obviously getting the dragon out of Erebor was Gandalf's end goal. So Thorin's quest was like, oh yeah, you should do that because I don't want the dragon around. Right. So it's not that Gandalf isn't.
There's a fair amount of pragmatism going around in the White Council,
but generally when people go ahead.
Okay, they're like operating on a higher level than a lot of the other rulers.
Yeah.
Like the other rulers are concerned with the day-to-day happenings of their realms, but the White Council is like this
big picture.
Big event that involves multiple kingdoms is something that we can take care of.
Yeah.
So like they're kind of like the United Nations, but they don't have representatives from everywhere. They're like the United Nations Security Council.
Yes. That connection I'm more comfortable with.
Yeah. If the UN Security Council always met in secret and didn't acknowledge to the rest of the world that they were part of the UN Security Council.
No. So here's the deal: that generally when people speak about like Illuminati stuff or that, what they're talking about is behind the scenes people whose main goal is to manipulate and control, and therefore is willing to use dishonesty to leverage force and like accumulate wealth and all this stuff. And it's not that there's no connection there, it's that there's a little bit less deviousness in the White Council than that, which is
with certain obvious exceptions.
Well, yes, Saruman, but but other than Saruman aside, yeah. So
I'll bet you anything that there are things that Galadriel and Gandalf don't tell Saruman. I'll bet you anything that there's things that I'll bet you anything that any two individuals in the White Council has secrets that between each other that nobody else knows.
Okay, yeah. Where bulking is that power in Tolkien's world is something that is very difficult to do well, and therefore the people who are doing it well are operating on this very high moral code that he imparts on most of his leaders. So there are bad leaders, like the Master of Lake Town is a kind of scummy guy. And so I'm not saying that there's none of that, especially in the histories of Numenor and Gondor and all that. But there's a lot of leaders who are decently good people following this moral code of this is the right way to exercise power, and therefore I am beholden to this. And so I feel like the White Council falls into that, that the majority of the people in the White Council are like, we have responsibilities to Middle Earth that we are fulfilling, not here's my personal agenda that I'm trying to worm into everything. With the understanding that both Galadriel and Saruman have personalities that is much more power grasping, and Gandalf and Elrond are much more passive in their exercise of power.
Well, now that I'm going to stop trolling on the White Council subject of the White Council. So essentially, this is kind of like the opening salvo of this 7-year anniversary extravaganza. Is there any plot here?
We did so much plot in the last episode with the frame.
Yeah.
We're probably allowed to take a step back and let the plot move on next time.
Now, one thing I would say is to ask, we could use this opportunity to have an actual storytelling taking place.
So it's like Celeborn's sister is there and she's like, this is a nice party and everything, but I remember a really good party that I went to 7,000 years ago.
The only thing is that Bilbo is there. And we know that Bilbo's been working on his book. And so having Bilbo sitting down with her and like coaxing out the story of the Merethathad that he's probably heard of by now might not be the world's worst thing.
So another thing that we may want to work in, this isn't necessarily a plot, but it's an element we want to consider, is in the last episode, we built up a lot about the tension between the dwarves and the elves, with the dwarves being all militarized and suspicious of the elves. So like if the elves just show up and the dwarves are friendly towards them, I think that'll like sort of
there's still
some kind of confrontation.
Yeah, this is a very segregated. Well, we got to be careful we don't do too much because then we need to have additional scenes to illustrate that. But I definitely think that we'll see a lot of segregation in this because remember this is the first night.
I I do think that having Diane's reaction to the arrival of the elves is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he can put on a good face and be a charming king who's very gracious in his interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the dwarves, like dwarves overall, not Diane in particular, is that they're good at dealing with their neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't consider it duplicitous to act in a
diplomatic
way. Yeah, so he's in full diplomacy mode.
Right.
And that would maybe tie in with the Noldor being a little bit secretive about something in their background. Like the fact that the audience has seen that Diane is very suspicious of the elves and then acts this way when he actually meets them would be like, okay, buddy, you're hiding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He would also like completely deny that he's being suspicious of the elves and continue to harp on the fact that there might be a dragon coming any moment now. We have to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So that's part of his sleight of hand there, where nope, problems with elves? I got no problems with elves. Elves are wonderful people, I'm sure. But dragons, you got to watch out for them. So yeah, I think that would fit well. The question is how to tie that all into one scene where we have Celeborn's sister, Bilbo, Dine, and Thranduil. Like, how does that happen? I mean, it's a party, so they can just be wondering.
Kind of like two-scene thing, maybe, where we have the kings greeting each other and they're like exchanging their formal welcome and whatever. So he's being diplomatic during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Thranduil could tease him, be like, "Wow, you guys seem very prepared in case dragon shows up." And he's like, "Oh yes, dragons. You have to watch out for those." And then maybe we could like cut to Bilbo and Celeborn's sister,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow conversation between them starts up about like how it seems like people aren't getting along, and she could say something about feasts are a good time for people to get along, and Bilbo could say something like, "Oh, tell me a story about a feast when people got along," and like she could start on the Merethadathan story.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of clumsy, but like I think it could like work.
You could smooth that out a little bit, but the general concept is good.
Yeah. Well, alternatively, you could just join them in media res, where they're already like Bilbo is specifically asking her about this already because he's already dug out that information. Like, which it would just save us. It would save us A, time, and B, it would save us the trouble of trying to figure out how to get into that. You know, we could just
be there.
Right. Like we've already had all the lead up conversation, and now we're here, and he's asking about this. He could say he could actually come over to her, and he could say that Gandalf told him that she was there, and he can start asking her about it, like with his like little notepad, right?
Yeah, Bilbo has the kind of personality where he has no trouble walking up to somebody and just starting a conversation. Like, we don't need to establish why he would want to talk to her. We could just have the conversation happen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's obviously curious and interested and very forthright in just being like, so tell me.
Right. Yeah, if he's curious about something, he doesn't have any problems asking about it.
Yeah.
And would probably be really willing to like tell his story in return. He's like, "You told me about the Merethadathan, and I'll tell you about that time that I talked with the dragon or something." So like he'll tell his story of what he did in The Hobbit too.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and we don't have to show that. We just have him offer. Yeah.
Like exchange of stories.
Exactly, and the issue we're having with the character of Celeborn's sister is that the Green Elves are very suspicious of outsiders. They're not very trusting, and they, in particular, do not get along with dwarves at all. So to have this character be someone who was around when the elves and dwarves were actually killing each other during the whole fiasco with Thingol's death, then, and to have her here being a voice for, well, let's not do that again. Something had to have changed in the intervening time where she's either more sensitive to conflict escalating to that point, or more open to meeting outsiders and learning new points of view. So if she's talking to the only hobbit at the party, we can just having her be willing to talk to Bilbo shows an openness that you wouldn't necessarily expect from someone with her background.
Well, like it also speaks to his kind of charm, though.
Right. That's something like we can go either way with that. She's brand new as a character. The audience has no reason to think anything in particular about her.
Like she can start off looking kind of uncomfortable, and then kind of like he says something. He says something adorable, and she's just like, "All right, fine," you know. You know what I mean? Yes. That Bilbo will be drawing the story out of her, right? And Bilbo is just so guileless. I think is what that's what it is. Is that he's just so guileless that she just can't tell him, "No, I'm not going to tell you this story,"
which would offer a future opportunity, not in this episode, to have a conversation between her and Bilbo where she questions him about his friendship with dwarves. Because clearly Bilbo is pro-dwarf. Yeah. He's also pro-bard, and he thinks the elves are decent enough people. He likes elves in general.
Yeah, well, he specifically chose to die alongside the Elven King, so...
Right, which is unusual for a guy. I mean, like, his companions all got imprisoned by the Elven King, so you'd think he'd be like, those elves, you can't trust them.
Yeah, but he's not. Just like, weirdly drawn to them. Yeah. Right.
So for a factioned party where everyone is very much sides, Bilbo is not a side-picking kind of guy.
Yeah.
And that would be something she would miss. And anyway, they could get into that if we wanted to go in that direction with, so what is it about? Why do you even trust dwarves? Like, don't you know that dwarves are speaking out of both sides of their mouth all the time, and you're such a guileless person, surely you would have a problem with that.
Okay.
I mean, we could do the same thing with Thranduil. I think that her clean slate kind of background allows, from the audience's perspective, allows for a different take, even though she has less of a clean slate than Thranduil when it comes to actual interactions with actual dwarves.
Okay.
Anyway, did we talk about the frame enough, or did you?
Yeah, that's good enough for now.
Okay,
that's enough for me to type something up here. All right. So, all right,
yay, we did the frame.
Yeah, that was easy. Where's my button? Kids, that's a joke about a Staples commercial from 20 years ago. So anyway.
I get it. I had a teacher who had that was easy button, and like she got people to press it like when they turned in assignments or something.
Nice.
All right. So let's work out. Let's start with our A plot, and then work out what the act structures of the different plots are going to be. Okay, so we're going to have to. So this is going to be in the first scenes of this plot line are going to be two separate scenes at least, because you have to have a scene where we're having, Luthien and company on their way up to I have to let that dog in. On their way up to the Merith Atherthad, or arriving at the Merith Atherthad.
Mm-hmm. Right, their introduction. Mm-hmm.
Right.
At the Doriath party.
Right. You also have to have Sauron and Thuringwethil arriving. That's all going to happen in the first act. So.
And we're going to need something with Turgon or Fingolfin and the whole hosting thing going on, where we establish what their goal is for the party. Mm-hmm. Like, we would want them to talk to each other about, like, okay, this is what we're hoping is going to happen here before any of it happens. I think.
Yeah. What I would say is that maybe even in the first scene, have the Sindar, the Doriath contingent arriving. Yeah, or coming up to Vinyamar,
Right. Are they traveling over land or by boat? Do we have a preference?
I would say it doesn't make that much sense for them to travel by boat because they have to go all the way over to the coast and then take the boat north, or they could just cut across by land. It's not a huge.
Right. It's certainly doable that they come by land. I just was throwing the option out there.
Yeah.
We could have Kieran arriving by boat because that's something he would do. It would make sense for him to do that. So you could like see people arriving in Vineyard like all over the place.
Although the last time that we saw Kieran, he was there.
That's true, but like we've established that several years have passed because like Fingolfin was just planning it when he was visiting Mythos.
Yeah, that's
like he could have gone home and come back.
Right. Yeah, but
if he went and got another group of elves and came with a whole fleet, it would make sense that he's traveling with his fleet.
Just keep in mind that the person watching this, just like let's say that they're a binge watcher and they're watching them back to back. Even the last time they saw him was an hour ago, and he was there in Vinyamar.
So we would have to work into his conversations with Turgon in episode 4 that he's going to head back to help.
Right, which could be done.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of retroactively going back into episodes to do something like that.
But that's a minor enough detail that
that's fine. And if we want to do that, that's fine.
So he has to mention leaving in his scene, and then it makes sense that he's coming back now.
Do we have like a many meetings montage at the beginning of this where we're seeing the different groups arriving in Vinyamar?
They all like show up one by one at Turgon's house, like in an unexpected party.
I mean, it seems the most efficient way to get everybody there and establish who's there.
Another suggestion they had, which if we're going to do it, would be, it wouldn't necessarily have to be an Act 1, but would be to have Fingolfin officially recognizing Turgon as King of Nevrast. Like it was to kind of establish him, so either to crown him or establish or to dedicate the throne room or something in that to show the relationship between the High King Fingolfin and the princes who are now kings of their own realms.
So what we could do is have everybody arriving, and then we cut to everybody like in their formal fancies in the throne room, having a scene where that happens. And everybody's there, so we don't have to go through a bunch of
that could be like the end of Act 1, maybe that scene,
right?
So that something happened. It's like the arrivals lead up to this first formal event, which opens the feast, and then the feast is the rest of the episode. Maybe.
Yeah, that's fine. That's like the first. That's like the keynote speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Right
for
at
the
the
feast.
Convention.
Yeah, but it's given by the High King of the Noldor. Because
super jealous of you right now. I'm just saying.
Fingolfin out like greeting people when they're arriving in the first couple scenes, and then like show everybody together.
Okay, so after the arrival in Vinyamar, because here's the issue, is that we need to get from here to our final confrontation, and there's not a lot of stuff going on in between there to hang this on.
Right. So realistically, party scenes on film don't last more than 5 minutes.
Right.
So we can have some of that stuff interspersed throughout this episode, but we're not actually going to show a 45-minute party here.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I do want to have somewhere in the episode a 5-minute scene of just elves singing and dancing and eating food and drinking and just like good times.
Right.
All extras doing a party scene. Like that needs to be part of this episode, but it doesn't need to be the meat of the episode.
Right. Okay.
We can have other events like as part of the party because like I think we're assuming this is like a multi-day or multi-week event.
Yeah.
So like they would have the keynote speech and then like they would have some time when they're like having a feast and singing and dancing, but there might be other like fun events that they do. I don't know what kinds of things, but like other events that we could then like sort of base the structure of the episode on.
Right.
They,
Well, that's
they have
like
some athletic competitions thrown in there, and
right. So, like for example, we could anytime that we're having a conversation between people, it's not that hard to be like, okay, instead of them being like in the ballroom dancing, they're like at a boat race. You know, they're watching a boat race or something, you know, just because so we can intersperse all that stuff, you know, in
right.
So
Right.
it's like just to give our characters something to be doing while they're engaged. So what scenes do we need from? Okay, let's come at this another way. Okay, do we need to have a conversation between Thorngwethel and Sauron where we establish what they're doing?
Well, here's the question. Do we want the audience to be surprised to figure out that it's Sauron in disguise at this party? Or do we want the audience to be in the know all along from the very beginning, watching it play out? Like, it's a different way of telling it.
Yeah.
Either one could work, but we need to know what our goal is.
I want them to know because because the fact that they know that increases the tension when he's doing this stuff, right? Because if it's a random guy and you're not like, what is this guy doing? Like you're sitting there wondering, who is this guy and what is he doing? As opposed to, oh no, that's Sauron and he's manipulating people.
Right. But do we want to know who they are in the very first time we see them on screen? Or is that somehow revealed? Like, do we want to have a conversation between them after we've already seen them individually on screen and then be like, oh snap, that's Sauron? I just don't know if we want that moment of like, oh no, Sauron's at the party,
right.
Other than in the very first scene of the very first act. Ta-da,
well,
Sauron.
Here's the thing. Like, are we having different actors play these people?
I don't think so. I think the idea was to use the same actors and just put them in costumes and makeup.
Right. So
the audience can maybe figure it out pretty quick anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, unless you had different actors, and then you would have to have a weird scene where like these two people were talking and somehow it comes,
who it is.
They're like, oh, Thorngwethel, and like people don't do that.
Right.
I mean, they could like have established disguises played by different actors for this specific episode. So like we might show them leaving Angband, flying to the feast, and like then as part of the arrival montage, maybe like they arrive, they go off in the woods somewhere, they assume their guises for this episode, which is like these two different elves that'll be played by different actors. And then they come in and they get welcomed with everybody. And so like we know that those two people are the bad guys, but they don't look like the bad guys. Because the problem with having them like look like themselves is that wouldn't Mithras have seen Sauron when he was captured?
Yeah.
But like he would, I feel like he would recognize that. Even if he was like wearing a different costume, like he would recognize the face of this guy that he saw.
He's also smaller and not as supernaturally fiery. Like there's a number of, like he's not glowing, which is another thing that we established for the Ainur, that they have like an internal light around them. So like there's a number of things that
there's a disguise going on, but I see the point that if the guy has the same face, it's not like Mithras hasn't had multiple conversations with them face to face at this point. And at least some of those conversations were fairly traumatic. So presumably he has that burned in his memory really good of what Sauron looks like. So even if he's like, and now I'm an elf, the question is, how good is this disguise? And we don't necessarily have to establish it because at this stage, it's not a important which actor is playing it. The problem is that we're gonna have Sauron do this trick again later, where he takes on disguises, and we're gonna have Thorngwethel do it again.
Yeah.
So having Thorngwethel do it again, in the very next episode, she'll be the same elf character she was here. That'll be easy. But for Sauron, we're probably going to want to use the Sauron actor in the various disguises. I don't know. I'm just...
Well, I mean, like, when he comes in many seasons from now as Anatar, do we want him to, like, look like Sauron the whole time so it can be that same actor playing him?
Yeah,
or will it be a completely different actor when he does that?
Right. Now, one thing we could do is utilize just enough makeup on this on the actor that, because you can do a lot with this, that like they look kind of like that person but kind of not like them.
Right. You can do contouring makeup to change the shape of someone's face. You can obviously change skin tone a little bit. You can,
and eye color. They can wear contacts or anything.
Yeah. I think I would prefer keeping the actors and heavily making them up.
Right. Also, it saves us the trouble of having to find like a super awesome actor to play Sauron
for one episode.
For an episode.
I think I more value the continuity of him being Sauron than I value, but surely the elves will see through this disguise. Like, just, all right, make it a better disguise. Like, keep layering on the disguise until you can't recognize it.
If Superman can get away with it with a pair of glasses.
Yeah. And
people do make fun of that, but, like, they accept it. Like, people.
Okay, well, there's a reason people make fun of it, because, like, if I take my glasses off, I pretty much still look just like me, and I sound just like me, and I act just like me. All I did is, oh, look, no glasses.
I mean, glasses make a huge difference. They do. Okay. Yes, I know it's still you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it doesn't now.
You didn't fool me with your clever disguise, Marie.
I know. And if you want to go another step, all the Marvel films, all it takes is a hat or a hoodie, and you suddenly aren't recognizable.
We look like ourselves at a baseball game.
What?
That's from the Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I didn't see that one.
They're walking onto a college campus with sunglasses and baseball caps. And Ant-Man says to the people with him, "We look like ourselves at a baseball game."
Exactly. It's not a disguise. It doesn't count. And yet, it happens.
Apparently, kissing is the disguise.
From a Winter Soldier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, other than the fact that every single movie that ever does that scene does it as an excuse to make the two characters kiss.
Yeah.
The premise behind that is that your faces are turned towards each other, so no one can see your face, and people are more likely to avert their eyes when they see PDA.
Yeah,
which is not always true, because some people are more likely to stare if they see PDA. So
it depends.
Yeah. So, but that's the idea of the disguise. There is that you are hiding your face at least.
Right. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing: if this were actually being done by a major studio, there's a 0% chance that Sauron and Thorngwethel come out of this episode not having kissed. I'm just saying. We're not doing that, but
we're not, because we specifically decided that Thorngwethel's interest and relationship with Sauron is different than that.
Non-romantic,
Exactly. She loves secrets, and she sees him as a guy who knows how to find secrets, and so she will get all the juicy details she wants out of life if she hangs around with him.
Yeah.
So that's her angle here, and so this party is a perfect place for her to go ferret out some secrets, but it's not. Yeah. We're not going to have them kissed. If we have any kissy facing going on in this episode, it's got to be Orodreth and Meryl.
Yes.
Sorry.
Which I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Okay. So we get if we have the arrival and we have the whatchamacallit, the dedication of, or whatever you want to call it,
It's either a dedication of the throne room or a crowning of Turgon. Like, it's your choice how we want to play that scene. It's in the throne room, and Fingolfin is there making it official. That's...
Yeah, I don't know about a crowning scene because like that feels too dramatic, and it feels like that's what this is about.
Right. So dedicating the throne room.
Right.
Let's call it a dedication. I think that's the word when you dedicate a cathedral, right?
I think so.
You've spent a lot more time in cathedrals than I have.
Fair. But yeah, I'm fairly certain the bishop dedicates the cathedral.
Sounds good to ceremony. Me. Okay.
Well, the other thing it could be is just like an official recognition of him as king or something, because like we showed Vinimar being built last time, so like
was
it could
not
be a
king of Vinimar then, though.
I guess so, but like it's official now that he has his realm constructed.
Yeah,
that's the point of this scene. Is that yes, everything's official now. It's like the opening of Vinimar, except it's obviously already in existence.
The grand opening, Vinimar. There definitely needs to be a ribbon and a big pair of scissors.
Something like that.
Okay, so what do we get in between the arrival and this scene? So if we are... So one thing that makes me a little nervous, and it makes me even more nervous if we have different actors doing Sauron and Thorngwethel, is how to clue the audience into what their plan is. Because they obviously can't tell each other the plan, because why would they not already know the plan?
Yeah. Well, they could come up with a signal if they succeed, kind of thing. Like Thorngwethel could be saying, if I ferret out the information we need, I'll let you know by doing XYZ or something like that, where like they're giving each other signals or codes or indications.
Why wouldn't they have arranged that before now?
Before they left Angband, right? Why would you talk about that where you could be overheard?
They could. I mean, now once they get there, they could decide.
Go there.
What's that?
Sorry, my connection was being fuzzy. I don't know if you caught everything I said, but does the audience need to know what their plan is when they first arrive, or would it become pretty obvious as soon as they start asking like really awkward questions of everybody around them?
Well, the audience needs to have an idea of what their plan is before the end of the first act, in order to kind of have an idea of what the central conflict is here.
All right. Do we want to have a conversation between Sauron and Thorngwethel in Angband at the very beginning of the episode before they set out? Because we ended last episode
with someone else, maybe? Like, could Gothmog or Bulldog or someone else in Angband like ask them what they're doing, and they like sort of give a Cliff Notes explanation?
The question is whether
Gothmog could. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say Gothmog could like question what Sauron's doing, or why is he leaving right now? Like, what are you up to, kind of thing. And Sauron has to answer himself, and he could answer in a very grandiose way of like, well, I'm just gonna go destabilize Beleriand and destroy the elves' alliances with each other. You sit here and have fun while I'm gone.
And that would be an opportunity to show like the orcs trying to train in sunlight or something, or like something else that's going on in Angband, another secondary project that they could just like be on the edges of before they leave.
Okay. All right.
Because I agree that there's very little reason for Sauron to be like, so here's what we're going to do. Like, we don't need that conversation. But Gothmog wouldn't get it, so he'd be a good person to say something to that wouldn't give away the details of the plan.
Right. Okay. So if we have that scene at the beginning, then we get everybody arriving in Vinimar. we established that that Luthien and Celeborn are there. That Luthien, Celeborn, Galadriel, and Celeborn's sister are all there. Dairon is there. Beleg and Mablung,
Yes.
presumably,
Yes.
are along for this.
I know Mablung is specifically mentioned in the book as attending. I don't think Beleg is, but like he could definitely still attend.
Yeah, they're kind
Unless
of like,
you don't want to leave like Thingol completely defenseless back in Doriath. Like if one of them wanted to stay behind, that would be a way to like make fewer characters appear.
Presumably, Thingol has more than 2 soldiers. But
he may not have more than 2 super good commanders, which Beleg and Mablung are.
I mean, I don't think having them on screen doesn't bother me. It's when you have to tie them in and give them stories and lines and stuff that's when it starts getting difficult. Having them there and having them be mostly.
I think the advantage of including them is that they will continue to be interacting with the Noldor throughout the rest of the first stage.
Yeah.
And that means that seeing them interact with the Noldor here outside of Doriath is probably a positive thing we want to show.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to give them any particular role in this episode, but if there is some kind of contest that they participate in, like, sure, why not? Like,
but we picture them really getting along with Glorfindel and Ecthelion.
Yeah. Right. Because, like, if we're going to have a big deal of Dairon and Maglar being in the same place and both performing.
The Battle Bros.
Right. Then we could certainly do something with contrasting Glorfindel Ecthelion with Beleg Mablung. Obviously, if there's an archery contest, Beleg's going to win. Like, you know, we can establish that here, though. Like, this is kind of our opportunity to highlight some characters' strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if there's, well, too bad Celegorm's not there, because then if there was a horse race, he would win. Probably.
Right. Well, I mean, but so we can have somebody else win, because if we're going to do that, the best horses belong to the Fëanorians. Mm-hmm. So it kind of means if there's anything horse related, Maedhros and Maglar have to win. I don't know.
So
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Actually, no, we specifically gave Finrod a Fëanorian horse, didn't we? A horse from Valinor. Yep. So Finrod can win a horse related contest if we want.
So, and we can bring Galdor back for a boat race if we wanted to do a boat race. So okay, before we get into any more of that stuff, a conversation maybe between Fingolfin and Turgon before the dedication ceremony stuff. Mm-hmm. We need to establish what the point of all this is.
Yes,
Fingolfin presumably would already be here before the other guests arrive. So
right, I mean, and he can compliment Turgon on his preparations and be like, thank you for all the hard work you've done. But yeah, he would already be there to greet everybody else, because it's his party. Technically, this is Fingolfin's party, not Turgon's party. Turgon is just providing the location.
Right.
Sort of.
All right, so that's pretty much everything that's involving Luthien and Sauron in Act 1. Act 2, this is when it starts getting a little. We get an idea of what we're up against here. Mm-hmm.
So I would think that Thuringwethel's method is more subtle and not as big a deal. Sauron's method is a little scarier.
Okay.
So if we're going to start their attempts, I would start with her, because all she does is walk up to someone and start talking and say something. Whereas he's going to like mind control zap a group of people essentially to make fights break out. Like, that's a little more severe than just
So maybe.
So what do you think about
Act 2 we see that we see this happening. So Act 2, Thuringwethel is kind of the main focus of the bad guy stuff. She's asking questions, but she's failing to get them to be suspicious. Act 3, we see Sauron trying to remotely influence people emotionally. And we should see Luthien counteracting that in some way.
Mhm.
If she's if she's involved here, if we're going to maintain that conflict. And then in Act 4, he realizes that he needs to take stronger measures here. He wants to have the entire place erupt in chaos.
Okay, but obviously that doesn't happen.
It doesn't
Right.
happen because he fails.
Right. Okay. So the Evelos thing,
Mhm.
the Act 3 or Act 4?
I would say probably Act 3.
Yeah. Okay, so whatever's going on with that gets her targeted by these guys would happen in Act 3.
Right.
And then Act 4 is his attempt to just turn the whole place into chaos.
Yeah.
Luthien countering him, song and dance, like, is there a way that we're going to be able to show the audience what she's doing?
Well,
like, this is not quite the levels of her, and then I put the whole room to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, so
the first thing that's got to happen is that in Act 3, like, he's going to specifically influence individuals to cause something to break out. Maybe even Edelas shows that she's susceptible to this kind of suggestion. And that's part of why she gets specifically targeted for kidnapping and torture.
And let's
Later
not
on.
show that she's not susceptible, and therefore Morgoth needs to come in and put the spell of bottomless dread on her. Because if she's resistant to that,
Yeah, that's true.
if she wasn't,
she's not. Well, she's defiant, right? When she's actively resistant,
Morgoth something to her.
right? Yeah, no, that's true. I don't know how else to make her a specific target, though. But the thing is that
She knows something about the kinslaying. If she somehow is the one who gives the biggest hint about it, maybe they'd be like, she's the one who knows something, and we definitely know that she knows something because
so maybe all the nobles
weren't in on whatever.
That's more of an Act 2 thing than I would say.
Okay, yeah. So that would. So part of what. It can be both Sauron and Thuringwethel doing the leading conversations in Act 2, and one of them talks to her.
Yeah.
Thuringwethel's conversation with Círdan will be later because she finally finds somebody who's actually suspicious. So that'll have to happen later in the episode. But one of them could talk to Edelas in Act 2.
Well, the question is, if she talks to Círdan here, why does she wait until the next? Why does she wait until episode 7 to talk to him again and tell him that the Feanorians burn the ships?
I think it's episode 6, not episode 7, because 7 is the one where Círdan goes and reveals the kinslaying. So it would be the next episode that she.
It is 6.
Him.
Okay, my mistake. But
it's the one right after this. The point is, it's not here. It's a little bit later. So is there a reason to delay? I think the obvious thing that happened in between is that she compared notes with Sauron.
Okay. All right.
So at the feast, she's feeling out, trying to identify targets, trying to start those suspicions. Afterwards, if Sauron's like, well, any success with it? Was there any elf that you thought was suspicious? She'd be like, well, of everyone I talked to, he seemed most likely to listen. And then Sauron's like, all right, great. Go target him and see what you can do with that.
Okay.
Maybe, I agree that it seems a little silly that they'd have a conversation, she would get a hook in and then be like, oh, okay, and walk away, instead of being like, let me push harder.
Yeah. Right.
So-
That's my concern is, or maybe she just doesn't think of that.
The other possibility is that conversation where he expresses some kind of doubt or suspicion is as he's leaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like her final interaction with him is
Yeah.
like, oh, but then he's gone. Like she doesn't
Right.
have the opportunity.
Or she
And
even just overhears.
Right. But
saying
something, if
Yeah.
it's later on at the end of the party, then the reason she doesn't act on it is because she didn't have the opportunity, more than because she didn't think of it, or because she, for some stupid reason, decided not to say anything.
Okay. Could we have Dairon maybe get a little suspicious to a degree and have Luthien kind of talk him down?
Yes. Dairon would be someone who had not met the Noldor before.
Mhm.
Like that's the difference with Círdan and Celeborn have met the Noldor and interacted. Dairon has met Galadriel, but no one else. And so this is his first time seeing a Noldor kingdom. He might be a little bit, not creeped out, but I can't imagine that the way the Noldor do things would be something that he would view as a positive.
Mhm.
So the being immersed in their culture, instead of having them be visitors to his culture, would make him uncomfortable anyway.
Yeah.
So I could see him being susceptible
They're
to.
so into stuff.
Yeah, he would just be like, I just don't get what this is all about. And then that gives him the opportunity to have some kind of like, and she'd be like, no, this is all great cultural exchange. Like, let's get to know them better. Like, so Luthien could be encouraging him
Right.
to help him overcome whatever that.
Right. Now, it's important to not make it Luthien out to be a fool.
Well, no, she's going to confront Sauron's.
No. What I mean is,
agenda.
like, she's not. What I'm trying to avoid here is her having this kind of like naive attitude about the Noldor.
Well, the thing is, have you? All right.
I mean, yes,
agree
the Sindar are generally naive in this case, but what I'm saying is that not giving her anything that explicitly says,
I hear you.
Fine.
Right. Luthien shouldn't sound like an idiot. Right. I agree. The problem, it's not really a problem. Her characterization is very innocent.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that Luthien says and does sound very young. And it's not because she's an idiot, and it's not because she's naive. It's just because that she is someone who is very open to trusting. And so she sounds way too trusting to people. But
what if okay. What if we kind of hang a lampshade on that a little bit? Okay. And we have her expressing this idea that of course there's unanswered questions. Like we give her kind of the same tack that somebody was saying. I think Círdan was saying this to Celeborn, that the idea that if something is wrong, it's gonna come out.
Yes.
She has this faith that it's gonna work out. Yeah. We shouldn't be inhospitable or rude to people just because we suspect that they might not be telling us everything. They don't owe us an explanation for everything that's ever happened to them.
Right. So that'll tie into the Galadriel plotline nicely if we have her voice something like that. And it lets her be less naive and more trusting. Right. But with some wisdom attached. And that's the thing is, with Luthien, we need to preserve her innocence, but not make her come across as foolish.
She needs to be as innocent as a dove and wise as a serpent.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. All right. In Act 3, for this plot line in particular, um, we can have something a little bit uglier break out, how does that go down?
Well, if we want to involve Dairon, we could have like Dairon and Maglo getting into an argument about who's the best singer.
That's
there's
perfect. There's
that thing about how
perfect.
Dairon is, Maglo is the best singer of everyone except for Dairon. So like they could be competitive or something, or arguing about something.
The thing is, most of the time in a situation like that, the person doesn't come right out and say, "I'm the best."
No,
their fans
could.
Fans come out and say, no, he's the best. There are exceptions to that. I realize that most of the professional swimming rivalries are consisted, at least in the Olympics, of the Australians and the Americans trash talking each other about, no, I'm the best, no, I'm the best, blah blah blah. Like,
boxers do that.
Yeah. So there are plenty of examples of people saying, no, I'm the best.
Right.
But in general, you don't have to say it about yourself. And if you do have to say it about yourself, then you're probably not the best.
But if we had the fans doing it, we could have like Sauron on one side being like, hey, did you know that Maglor is a really, really good singer? And Thurngwethel on the other side being like, no, I think Dairon is a really good singer. And then like attracting a following until it like comes to a head somehow.
Right.
Yeah. So that would make some sense.
And at the same time, like once their fans are going at it, having their two egos also clash.
Oh yeah.
They don't have to be overtly saying, "Oh, I'm way better than you do." Like it's not even a thing.
Right. No,
they don't have to say that.
I'm fine with them having egos. Like I'm not suggesting that they wouldn't feel that way. I just kind of want it to be indirect to start with.
Right.
Maglor is proud. The Noldor in general are proud. The Feanorians in general are proud. There's no reason to suspect that Maglor would be unaware of his talent or downplay his talent in any way. Like he's not the kind of professional musician who would just play in the subway and hope no one noticed it was him or something. Like he's not that guy. So that fits.
He's the guy who starts playing on the subway and then has a flash mob orchestra join him.
Something like that. Exactly.
Solo.
Yeah. Something that would draw attention. So, and they're both used to being very comfortably acknowledged as the best among their people.
Yes.
So I could easily see Maglor doing the kind of thing of saying, yeah, he's pretty good for the Sindar. Sure, for someone who's never trained in Valinor.
For an unwashed savage, he's all right.
Right, for someone who's never been to Valinor, he's amazing.
Yeah.
But I've heard the Valar themselves, and I was trained in music by whoever. So let me just be a snob and look down on you.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, don't they play different instruments? Because I think Dairon is a piper and Maglor is a harpist, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like Maglor's also a singer, and Dairon doesn't sing as much. Luthien sings.
Right. Yeah.
Like they have different types of music that they do. I'm sure they could each play each other's instrument perfectly well, but like that's their focus.
Yeah.
So like it wouldn't be something you could do in like an even competition where they like one plays one thing, one plays the other thing. It's different enough.
Yeah.
And so they can't just have like a sing off to resolve the issue either.
Right. So I would think giving them different skills would be pretty cool. If Maglor, who's I guess described as the mightiest singer at one point, except with some exceptions maybe, then if he were someone who could perform like with a classically trained voice, like an opera singer type
and he does a lot of more technical work on the harp.
Right. And so he can do all that. And then if Dairon is more like what you would see from an Irish folk group or a
bard
bluegrass band, where it's a let me show you how fast I can play this instrument. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard some of those songs where it's just like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, that's, and especially on a pipe, that's pretty tricky to like be able to breathe and pull that off. So he could do something that's quite an impressive feat, but very, very different in style.
Yeah, and more, what's the word? Improvised.
Yes. So there's in Concerning Hobbits, the Howard Shore music, the very, very beginning of it is a tin whistle.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes into an actual flute later, but the really key piece in the very beginning is tin whistle. And a tin whistle is a very cheap, easy to obtain and easy to learn how to play instrument. It doesn't require any real technical skill to use a tin whistle. I know this because I can play one. And yet, to do it well, there's a lot of emotion you put into it, in the sense that you slide between the notes and you give it character. It's not just a hit each note individually. It's how you turn that into a musical piece. So, and you can hear that in that little piece. There's a few little details. Again, it takes nothing to learn how to do. I can do it, so I'm not pretending that Dairon showing off that would be a technical thing, but it would be a expressive type of music.
Yes,
so
I agree.
he could do something with a flute that is more impressive than a tin whistle, but it is with feeling. Feeling, yes.
So how does Luthien counteract this nonsense? I mean, like, she could, of course, just go over there like, boys. Obviously, I'm the best musician of the, that's not where I was actually planning on going with that, but
it just kind of slipped out.
Maybe she could, like, maybe they could get into some kind of like competition where Magalo is playing his harp or singing or whatever, and Dairon is playing his flute or whatever, and she suggests something like they both play together and she'll sing or something, so like they make a band instead of going against each other.
But that's where we wind up in the climax of the episode. So I don't want to like get there.
So at this stage, she could be into the dancing side of things, because once she starts singing, her magic is gonna take over Sauron's magic.
Yeah.
So, but her dancing is not without its effect. So she could politely suggest that they do a dueling banjos thing, where each one does it in turn, and she dances to both.
Right.
So like she does a dance performance.
So she unifies it with the dance. Yeah.
Exactly. So that way they're still separate. But she's calming.
And people are like more focused on enjoying her dancing than they are on arguing about which one is better.
Exactly. Right. So she kind of just diffuses the argument by putting it aside. Later she'll have to like actively counteract it.
Yeah, but this is still just her stepping in and saying, look, you guys are good, but I'm better. Focus on me.
I mean,
polite way.
The thing is, Luthien, just like Bilbo can get away with a lot by being a direct, Luthien can get away with a lot by having no actual ill will towards anyone.
Yeah.
So even though she is the best at everything and has the, is beautiful and is amazing and everybody loves her, so she could very easily be like a diva personality.
Yeah.
Like that would fit the description of who she is.
Yeah.
She's not concerned about that. So because she doesn't care, she gets away with it. I think is where we would take her character there. Because she is the best.
Oh yeah, I wasn't suggesting that she did, but
but I hear you. It's like that. Right, exactly. I'm the best. Nope.
Hey, what do we think? What do we think that Sauron plays instrumentally?
We were giving him. Does he have an instrument, or is it just voice?
I would like to see him like just start off like in a corner playing an instrument and then start to sing along with it.
Okay, because I know
And
that
like he can maybe be doing that in the background. So like while
Well, this is
doing his
later.
thing, Sauron is doing his thing like with it or something,
well,
or he's playing exactly in tune.
later. This is in
Okay.
the final act.
So I know that Hakon's suggestion for his voice is that it's a two-tone voice where you get two sounds at once.
Yeah.
So that would be a technical singing ability.
Well, no, it's a technically impossible singing ability for like a biological person.
I know, but whatever. That's the thing we're doing with Sauron can do that.
I mean, it would make it feel supernatural to do that. Absolutely, yeah.
Which is that is where, and he is someone who obviously joined in the music of the Einar with his voice.
Yes,
but as Alice Maya, and now he's with Morgoth, so he's switched. So like that two-tone voice thing kind of shows his dual allegiance thing. So the question is, which type of instrument would have a duality to it?
Yeah, I think I know.
That's where I'm asking. So
I think I know something that would work. Hang on, let me see if I can.
Because Sauron is all about not just treachery, not just tricking people, but the duplicity,
right?
The being able to
like a. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, being able to be two things at once.
Also, if it could be like a really beautiful instrument, that could be like something he's made, like just something he would have to construct for himself, and it would be like a whole work of art just as an instrument.
Yes. I don't know if you've seen The Dark Crystal, but it's a Jim Henson movie with puppets that they're making a new thing for Netflix. Yay! But it's from the early 80s, so it's an old fantasy movie. The Gelfling, Jen, has a reed flute that he plays. It's like a Y shape, so it's just like a little bit of a flute, and then the two sides come down, and he plays it like it wouldn't work in reality. Like it's a fantasy instrument. What they use to put it on the soundtrack is an ocarina. So it doesn't look like an ocarina, but when he plays it, that's what it sounds like. So we could create a fantasy instrument. All right, Nick, what do you got?
Okay, hang on. I got some. This is a violin zither.
Okay.
Hang on a second. Let me get this. Here we go. Okay. Full screen?
It's okay, full screen, I see it. Yeah, okay. I see it.
Can you hear it?
No.
Oh, of course not. Hang on. Let me... Okay, hang on. I can do this. I can fix this. Oh, wait. Did I mess that up? Were you guys still not able to hear it?
No, I heard it.
I heard it.
Okay, so basically the whole idea is that you're able to pluck the strings on the left-hand side, what he's doing with his left hand. Now, he's not doing a lot of it here, but it's that's more of like a bass tone. And then you're essentially playing like a bass fiddle and a violin at the same time.
Okay. I like the implications there that you're doing two things at once, and it at least it's not an accordion. So
right, yeah. Well, that was the other like that's pretty much the other instrument that does it. I mean, I get hurdy-gurdy's kind of work, but I don't know.
I like the sound of a hammered dulcimer, and
I was thinking that too. Actually, a dulcimer Or the violin zither actually reminded me of an instrument that I used to play called a bowed psaltery, which I never learned to do this, but it's this triangular instrument that like you can. I only did it with one bow, but you can do it with two bows. Like you have a bow like a violin bow, and it has these strings. It's like going up the side, and you can like play it with two bows at the same time.
Mm.
You know what? As I'm looking at a picture of a hurdy-gurdy now. As I'm looking at it, like the mechanical nature of it is really attracting me.
Okay, well, here's the thing. If Sauron debuts an instrument that no one there's ever seen before, he's drawing attention to himself. And the whole idea of being a spy is
well, I mean, he's about to sing out over the whole crowd. Like he's kind of
but you wouldn't want to do it with an instrument that no one's ever even thought of,
fine.
Right?
Okay.
Well, no, like the violin zither thing could be something that's just a slight modification of an existing stringed instrument.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's not that far off from a regular zither.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want the audience to be like, well, doesn't anyone recognize that this is something they've never seen before? I would want it to be like, oh, this must just be an elvish thing. So I don't know what hurdy-gurdies look like, but I mean, did they look at all like something the elves would have?
Hang on a second. I'll show you. I got to change the settings again so you can hear it.
Because if we have Magler playing a harp and we've got Dairon playing a flute, like that's the... Okay, so I agree that they do look more technical, which would lend itself to Sauron's interests. And it is...
I mean, I'm not like super married to it. I just think
it was a good suggestion.
I just think
of what would Sauron play. I mean, why not, right? And we wouldn't have him playing AC/DC, so it's fine.
Right. Yeah. Well, I actually picked this particular thing out because I wanted to show like the range that they're capable of. Because they can play. Here, hang on. Let me see. Okay. Hang on a second. And I'll switch. And
I'm here with Robin Beanland. Robin, tell us about the music. Tell us about the some rhythm bands, because I'm at home, so that's the first. I'll give you a little go on it. Can it? They're really nice and really. It's got a very interesting sound. So yes. Tell us about this. So this is a hurdy-gurdy, and it's kind of like a violin, but instead of having a bow, like you have here, right? Instead of having a bow, so you have Imagine this is the bow right here. Bow, okay, so go ahead and play it. And then you've got the melody string here. Again, this is the same one that you recorded in game. Sounds familiar. A bit of artistic license with it. You can't play on that's a drone string, so you can't play a bass line on it other than that single note. So what I did is I used auto-tune and kind of made it bass line, so it was a bit more sort of interesting. Yes. You were to come along. You'll play the lead line, right? And then if I join in on the hurdy, I'll start accompanying you. What about this says pirate?
Okay. Anyway, so like it has bass strings that you can engage on the one side, as well as the melody strings on the front. I feel like now most hurdy-gurdies only have like 1 or 2 drone strings on the back, but I imagine that Sauron could have as many as he wants because Sauron. But anyway,
and there is the point that he can have an instrument that looks whatever we want it to look like,
right?
And the sound can be based on a completely different instrument.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying. It's like we can invent a fantasy instrument here if we wanted to.
Right.
It'd be cooler if it was a real one that would actually play the sounds that we're going to have it play, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm fine with him having something unique.
Mm-hmm.
Because why would he just play an Elvish instrument?
Yeah.
The conversation they had yesterday about Sauron's relationship with the elves at this point is that he doesn't hate them. He doesn't despise them or have such strong anger against them the way Morgoth does.
Right.
So he'd be slightly more fine with taking on their own culture so that he can do what he wants with it.
Right. Yeah.
So it wouldn't be totally out of character for him to play an instrument that the elves play.
Yeah.
Just because he could. But it also would not be out of character for him to invent his own. So I can see the advantages of doing it the other way. Yeah. I guess the thing is that our finale of this episode is going to seem a little weird if the elves don't figure out it's Sauron.
Well, so here's the thing.
Like at some point,
I was just thinking about this actually. The only thing that I can think of is if he's sitting in a place where he's not visible. Right? Like if he's like up on
right, so he's not on like a stage doing this.
No. He's up on like a like in almost like in a windowsill or something. Not in a windowsill, but you know what I mean? Like
concealed from sight.
Right.
But looking down on the crowd.
Right. And he's able to play it in such a way that it's not obvious where the sound's coming from. That his playing and his singing is kind of like he's an Ainur, you know, like he's like, and we're going to see that power level involved.
Yes. Okay. Because the goal was that Luthien would counter it without recognizing who caused the problem.
Right.
That Finrod would figure out that something is up.
Right.
And that Maedhros would have flashbacks to being attacked by Sauron.
Right.
So and that everyone else would be mostly ignorant about what just happened. Like, so those were the reactions we were asked to provide. So yeah, having him get up in front of everybody and play a song that makes the whole place go into a wild panic doesn't lend itself to having no one figure out what just happened there. So yeah, having him be hidden from view and this panic breaks out that no one sees a source to, that would be, well, not panic, but escalating bar fight that breaks out, no one would see him as the source of it. So that's fine.
Right. So now Luthien is going to do the thing, like she's essentially going to almost do the Iluvatar thing, right? Where she's going to harmonize off of, she's going to work with what Sauron's pumping out into the atmosphere already to bring it back around to something
Harmonious.
Yeah, to something harmonious. And it's going to inspire Dairon to then join her and see this is to join her and start playing. And then Maglor joins them both and start playing. Now the three of them are together, unified.
And that's what counters Sauron's. Okay.
Right.
All right. That makes sense to me. I'm more comfortable with the direction this was headed than my initial thoughts, which were, huh.
Okay. Okay. Something harmonious. Okay. And there's also going to be a difference between the music from the previous act and this music that they're making now, because this is music of power. This isn't, I mean, now granted, any Elvish music is music of power to some degree, but they are actively pumping out their own own strength and will in this music at this point.
If Luthien perceives the danger first,
right,
and acts to change it, Dairon's response would be because he wants to back Luthien up.
Right.
So he would just join her because she's Luthien, and he joins Luthien.
Right.
Maglor would have seen Mithras' reaction.
Right.
Which would inspire him to do something about this. So he joins in to help Luthien because he thinks there's a problem, but it wouldn't necessarily be... He's putting aside whatever issue they had before with the conflict of... He doesn't care who's better. He just wants to fix the problem.
Right. And we could show, like, during the dueling thing, right? We can show that when that ends, that they're not, like, there's still no mutual respect there.
Right. This isn't the kind of thing where they, like, go shake each other's hands and be like, great job, man. That was so much fun.
Right.
Like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. They're still kind of, like, shooting each other dirty looks and whatnot. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our main plot. Done. Let's talk about Celeborn and Galadriel.
So they arrived together because they both traveled here from Doria. So they would be in the same sequence where Luthien arrives. The two of them arrive as well. They're part of that scene. Galadriel has been very reserved back in Doria, but she's come out of her shell a little bit. So she should probably be genuinely happy to see her relatives again at this party, I would think. So even though she's not her usual self. So possibly Eredel, who was one of the last ones to talk to her and has asked after her and like kind of had her show interest, could be like, wow, Galadriel, so great to see you, kind of greeting. Where you been? What's going on? So that would just be like a friendly greeting. And then her siblings, her brothers, could at some point in the episode confront her and be like, so everyone claimed realms of their own and you were so keen on having realms of your own. Why don't you have a realm?
Right.
Like that conversation would be part of her thing where Celeborn's not present. With Celeborn there, we would want to see him being a little protective of her.
Yeah.
Like, she's been someone who's a little fragile, and now she's going back to meet her family again, and they're gonna. It's not like a reunion situation, but it is kind of like someone going home for Thanksgiving dinner when there's maybe some issues where the extended family is going to give you a hard time about, so why haven't you gotten married yet? And when are you having kids? And aren't you ever going to finish that college degree? Or, that kind of situation where there's expectations.
Yeah. I'm about to travel to the other side of the planet with my wife, who is going to be seeing a lot of her family for the first time in a few years. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that going on.
Right. So it's uncomfortable. And I realize that there are times when it's dysfunctional, depending on your family situation, as to what people give you a hard time about.
But I don't think Galadriel's family is dysfunctional. Like, they're the least dysfunctional family of everyone.
They're the most functional Noldo that we know of.
To be fair, we don't know enough about Angerod and Egnar to really make that statement. Finrod's a decent guy. Finrod is a very decent guy, and I would not expect him to give her a hard time. If anything,
but we see them all hanging out to get
Yeah.
What are you doing to that baby?
Feeding the baby. That's always a good plan.
Anyway, so but we see them hanging out together, which we don't really get a lot of outside the Feanorians, and that seems to be more of just
dysfunctional
loyalty than loyal to the oath that's keeping them together.
I agree, and
with the exception maybe of Mithras and Maglor.
That does seem genuine friendship, but even so, I mean, the kind that gets you killed. So
yes,
yes. So Finrod is a decent guy, and I don't expect him to pressure her. But they've had multiple conversations on their way to Middle Earth, so he could do it in a "I'm concerned about you" way of "I thought this was your dream. What are you doing about that? Did you give up on it? Did something change?" Like, he would have reasons to ask her.
Right.
Canonically, she gives him a hard time at this feast. So aren't you going to settle down and get married?
Yeah.
Feasts that come later. Because I thought that happened in Nargothrond.
Did it? Oh, was it? Yeah, it's after he builds Nargothrond, and she's like,
she goes to visit him in Nargothrond or something. Or
yeah,
he comes to visit her. And
you're right. It's probably
I would check my book, but I have paint all over my hands right now, and I don't really want to touch it. But I think it comes later.
I think you're correct, because the whole point is that he says, "I'm not going to leave anything for an heir to inherit," which makes a lot more sense.
And like, he foresees the oath or something, and it says,
"Yeah." Oops.
Yep.
Troubling him, where he was like genuinely, completely happy with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you did cut out for a bit there, but
I think we were able to divine it from context.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. That's a Nargothrond related comment. I just meant that it was funny that I'm like, oh yes, Finrod would never say that to Galadriel, but Galadriel would say things to Finrod. So the reason I brought up the dysfunction thing is that if someone were going home to a dysfunctional family in this situation, then you might want to be a little protective and make sure that she's okay. With her family being who they are, Celeborn doesn't necessarily know that. So why would he be, like, how protective is he going to be?
Right. So, if Curfin and Celegorm were here, if you wanted to show Celeborn being protective, having Celegorm dancing with Galadriel at the beginning of Act 3 and having Celeborn, maybe not. Maybe having Curfin dancing with Galadriel at the beginning of Act 3 and having Celeborn cut in to save her from him.
Hmm.
Wouldn't be the world's worst thing, but I don't know. What I do think in Act 3 is that the contest of musicians is going to get a little loud, and so the two of them leave they go for a walk outside so that they can have some private time.
Yeah. And the idea was that their final conversation would be overlooking the harbor.
Right.
Because the ships are in the harbor, and I realize they're not Teleri ships, they're Philathron ships, but even so, it's enough context for her to...
Teleri.
Exactly.
So they would probably look similar, and they might look similar enough to trigger bad memories or something.
It was to give the right context to have her bring it up, that she's looking at something that reminds her of it. There could even be a physical aspect of the harbor set up that is similar to Aqualande, like a minor way that they're looking right at, and he just starts talking about that.
If they had an arch or something there, that would really remind her, because didn't her mother die by falling off the arch? Or that's shot by a straight arrow and then fell off the arch or something. That was related to her mother's death.
Yes, there was an archery issue, which, so we were talking about having various contests, and most of them are pretty innocent, but archery is obviously something that's used for both hunting and battle. So,
So the difference, there's the one thing that I was trying very, very strenuously to get the hosts to avoid was any kind of purely martial contests, because it just seems like a terrible idea, right? If you had this is not the context in which to have a tournament.
Yeah, peace through fighting.
Yeah. However, archery, you're not really you're not shooting at your opponent.
Right. It's a skill.
Right.
It's just a test of skill, and it doesn't even necessarily have to have a martial context to it, although it certainly can. So from that point of view, it might be innocent enough to include, but at the same time have bad memory. So if we wanted to have an Act 3 thing, they would leave the area where the music is and go for a walk. And if they're walking by the archery, she might be like, nah, I'm going to keep walking. She doesn't want to hang out there. And that would be an opportunity for her to start talking about her mother. And then we could end with them over by the harbor or talking about the actual kids. Because it doesn't have to be, it's two separate reveals. Talking about the death of her mother is not mentioning the kinslaying, even though the audience knows that's the context. But it leads to it. So I don't know. It doesn't have to be the same conversation, even it could be on different days.
So they pass by an archery contest, which Bedlig is obviously winning. And
I mean, Fingon can be there too. Fingon has, of course, the bow that he did not use to shoot Mithros with.
Yeah.
But Bedlig should win.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easy for the audience to assume that the Noldor are better at everything than the Sindar.
Yeah.
And part of this should be showing that that's not really the case.
Yeah.
So the boating contest can be won by Sindar, obviously, and the same with the archery. And then Dairon gives Maglar a run for his money. So it's this whole time there should be this. They're different, but not a superior inferior situation. They're just different.
Yeah. Okay. Well, interestingly, like the arrow fire that was taking place on the arch was actually coming from the Teleri. You know, in our adaptation.
Right, because that was the only weapons they really had.
Right.
And I mean, aside from some like harpoons and stuff in the boats. Yeah, so I mean that brings up the messiness of the kinslaying too. With it wasn't.
So maybe the way that conversation could go is like they're walking by the contest, and Celeborn could mention something about he saw Galadriel bring her bow when she came to Dorothy the first time, but he never saw her shoot it. So he's like, would you take part in this competition? Are you a good archer? And she's like, I haven't fired that bow since my mother died, or something. And then like that sort of leads into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be good because we're trying to express her withdrawn state as being a reaction to that grief and to her own self-doubt. So it's not just that seeing an archery contest makes her think about her mother's death and therefore she's upset. It's that she personally is not going to fire a bow right now because she's not in a good place.
Yeah, I don't think that she would never fire a bow. Like I think
it's just right now.
She's in battle, like she would do that. But maybe she hasn't done it since that happened because there hasn't been a need for it, and like that wouldn't be her first weapon to go to because of the memories associated with seeing her mother pierced by an arrow falling off the arch or something.
Exactly. So I think we can have her.
I think we were specifically asked to have her mother stabbed, by the way.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was a straight arrow at first.
No, they
changed it.
They changed it because they didn't want it to be an accident. They wanted somebody to have driven a piece of steel into her, and then she falls backwards off the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I realized that the goal was to make sure that she didn't die from the fall, that she died from being killed by an elf.
Right. And which a sword is a lot more likely to do that than a single arrow. So
yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well,
I mean, arrow.
It still reminds her of the fight. It's fine.
Right.
And there was no reason for her to be firing a bow on the Hillcrax, I don't think.
No, because there was nothing alive there, really.
Right. A walrus or something, like for food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had them fishing at one point, but like that was it. So there's. It would be easy to have her say, I haven't shot a bow since my mother's death, and have that be a believable statement to have made.
But I don't know if it would be as strong if her mother wasn't killed by an arrow. So is there something else we could do if her mother does get... Which side is her mother stabbed by if she does get stabbed?
She's stabbed by one of Fingolfin's men.
Yeah, so the situation was that Eowyn and the Teleri archers are on top of the arch, and Fingolfin's group starts coming up the side of the arch to confront them.
Because they're shooting down on the Feanor's ships.
Yeah, they're shooting at the ships. And then, so as they come up the arch, they turn their fire towards close to Fingolfin. Irame is killed by an arrow. So the arrows do manage to kill Irame in that. And then when Fingolfin's group charges, that's when Eowyn is killed and falls off the arch. And then from the other side of they're hemmed in up there because from the other side of the arch, Mithras is coming up with his guys to meet in the middle. So Mithras and Fingolfin meet in the middle, and all the Teleri are gone.
Right.
During all of this, Galadriel had arrived at the battle with Fingolfin's force. As soon as she sees her mother fall, she dives into the harbor to try and rescue her, even though it's too late. So the next we see of Galadriel, she's pulling her mom's dead body out of the water. So the horrible memories for Galadriel would be seeing her mother fall to her death.
Could be a diving competition.
I was about to say, there's cliffs here and there's water, so they could walk. Yeah, it could be.
It doesn't even have to be a competition, does it?
It just could be elves swimming and having fun.
It could be like base diving.
Yeah, yeah. So elves are diving and swimming in the harbor.
Yeah.
And Galadriel's like, nope, 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 nope. So Celeborn could ask her, like, oh, do you not swim or something?
Yeah. Not anymore.
Yeah. So she could be like, oh, well, they're not for a long time now. And he'd be like, oh, well, did they not have water in Valinor? Like, wait, what happened there? And she's like, no, of course, I swim all the time when I was a child at Aqualande and everything, but not since I've not since my mother, not since I've come to Middle Earth, and then maybe not since my mother died.
The last time she swam would have been swimming after her mother's dead body.
Yeah.
Yes. So swimming is something she could be like, nah, I don't want to do that again. That would fit.
Which is interesting considering that she winds up with this attachment to water.
That's true.
Right. Nenya and all that. So she's going to work through this.
Yeah.
At some point, but she has not yet done so. Okay.
So maybe that could be like a scene with her and Celeborn, like somehow is like her going swimming again for the first time, and Celeborn is there with her to support her or something.
Yeah. Give me a second. I gotta let the dog in real quick. I'll be right back. Yeah. You need 4 ounces of the cleansed stuff.
Where is the...
Okay. Sorry about that. Probably should turn off my microphone before I walked over there, but yeah.
You're fine.
We're on a new diet thing, and today was a not eating anything day. So
That sounds unpleasant.
it's super unpleasant. I'm not hungry, weirdly.
Okay.
But I'm a little dizzy and a little cranky and a little I got a little headache. But other than that, I'm like I don't feel pain in my stomach where I would normally feel so I was hungry.
So now I have to be my mom and say, have you had enough water to drink?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what someone was just asking me. I've had probably about 60 ounces of water so far.
That's what my mom always asked if we ever had a headache. Is, did you drink enough water?
Yeah. All right. So Celeborn. So basically, we get the reveal of the kinslaying. We get Celeborn's horrified face. We go to the confrontation in the ballroom, and after that resolves, we go back and Celeborn has decided that it does nobody any good for him to reveal this information. That, and he tells Galadriel that she needs to forgive herself, that she can't go through her, like, even if she did something wrong, she can't go through her whole life carrying that.
Yeah, whatever he should say to her should be focused on healing her. Like,
right.
his goal here is to say something that will help her to process, move on, make something good of this, whatever, however you want to go with it. But his focus should not be on the, wow, I just received a really important piece of information that is politically valuable. Like, that's clearly not where he's going to go with this. And
she might even think, like, oh no, are you going to tell Thingol about this? And he'd be like, no, I won't do that. Like, that would be her first thought, I think, is, oh no, I've screwed it up for the Noldor by revealing this to Astinda. But, like, he would be like, no, I won't tell.
The thing is, something about their relationship needs to have her implicitly trust him. Like, she might be concerned about that on some level, but if she was really concerned about that, she wouldn't have told him. So, like, the trust.
And she might even kind of be coming at this from, if he tells, then if she reveals this information to everybody else, then that's the best thing to do. Like, she trusts him
to make the right call.
Right. Not to keep the secret. That's not what she's trusting him. She's trusting him with this information to do the right thing with it. And she may not know for certain what the right thing is.
Yeah, because we've established that there's this long-running, the Noldor approaches, let's just not tell them and hope it never comes up. But Galadriel's the one who's been living in Doriath for like 15 years now. So she's had to confront that more directly than most of the Noldor. Like, most of the Noldor just happen to not mention it the occasional time they run into Astinda. No big deal. Let's just leave that in the past. But with Galadriel, she's maybe feeling a little bit more like, you know what? Maybe someone needs to know. Maybe someone needs to be told. Like, that's why she tells, is not just because she needed to get the truth out herself, but because she was feeling like keeping a secret was not good.
Right.
Even if it's, commanded by the High King, essentially.
Right.
And if it came out that Doriath knows all of a sudden, all the Noldor would know that she's the one who spilled the beans.
Right.
Because she's the one who lives there. Celeborn's close with her, and everyone at this party has seen them together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so it's true that she's trusting him and that she now needs him to make a good call for her. But I don't want her to spill her deepest secret
by accident.
And that by accident, or to then turn to him afterwards and be like, don't tell anybody. Like, right. I think that would really.
I actually think that she might tell him, I have to what I'm about to tell you is a terrible secret. She might say something to that effect, and he might offer to promise to keep that secret. He doesn't know what it is yet, right? He might offer to promise to keep that secret, and she says to him, no. I will ask no oath of secrecy. I'm not going to ask any oaths from you. I've seen the oath life, and I'm not about that oath life. That is a terrible idea.
I do like the idea of Galadriel explicitly bringing up oaths. I think that's a pretty cool one.
It's not my idea. Somebody else came up with it. I just don't remember who.
It's still a good idea. No,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I do like that. The issue I have is not a fair one. So I guess I have to say what my issue is and then just let it go. It's that the times in my life where someone has sat me down and said something that would be the equivalent of, by the way, the kinslaying. I mean, this is.
Do you have a lot of people in your life who are mass murderers, or
no?
This might explain your obsession with the Feanorians.
Right. No, I mean someone dropping a personal bombshell of something that they don't talk about in public, you know, that kind of thing. Right. So I mean, I'm talking like 2 or 3 conversations total over my entire life where this kind of thing has come up, and I
feel like we have had a conversation along those lines. Actually,
did we?
Anyway,
no. If so, then no, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about something else.
Okay.
Gotcha. I've never talked to you about anything that I think falls into that category.
Okay.
But
hold on, let's clear this up. Are either of you mass murderers?
No. I promise that I'm not a mass murderer.
One of us is a mass murderer apologist.
Shush you. There are no. I've never had a conversation with someone about a murder that they committed. I have had conversations with people about something that either they did or someone else did to them that they wouldn't publicly talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And when those conversations happened, they didn't begin them by saying, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody. Like, they didn't start with that. It was more of we were talking about something else, and the conversation went in a certain direction, and they shared a personal confidence.
Right.
It just naturally led into that. And at the end of the conversation, I didn't turn to them and say, don't worry, I won't tell anybody either. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of implicitly understood that probably I shouldn't immediately go blab to someone else this personal confidence I just received. You know, it was that kind of thing. So
I agree that in real life,
that
is the way it happens.
Exactly. So that's a real life issue. This is a television show, and we need to convey things to the audience.
Right.
So I can let go of the reality of how confidences work and allow them to have something.
Right.
I'm fine with that. I just needed to get that off my chest first to be like, that's not how this works.
Yeah. Well, also there's also a few other things that work here. One being that she's also, as she's psyching herself up to tell him, because once you tell somebody, I have to tell you something that's very important and personally damaging. Once you tell somebody that, now you have to kind of tell them something important and personally damaging, right? So you've kind of burned your ships at that point. No pun intended. I actually, no pun intended, for real. I was actually thinking of Cortez.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's those ships burning.
I was about to say, you say ship burning around me, it means exactly one thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, I didn't realize it until after the words came out of my mouth. I was like, oh, wait, there's another very important burning of ships that I could be referring to, which doesn't actually mean exactly the same thing. There's a certain amount of that.
Yeah. Well, no, because you can't go back, burn your bridges behind you situation on one level. But ship burning has an element of betrayal in it as well.
Right. Yeah. We're also not going back to get them.
Right. So yes, if we have her say something that prefaces the conversation, that alerts the audience to what's going to happen. And I'm very understanding that is how you write a script. You clue the audience in. You either say something earlier in the episode that makes them curious if the person's gonna divulge the information, or you lead into the conversation in a way that gets them on the right page. So yeah, whatever we have to do, it's fine.
All right.
Well, I mean, it's a damaging thing for both Galadriel and Celeborn because, like, it's his kin that her kin slew. So, like, it's related to both of them in that way. It's not completely one-sided. It just affects Galadriel. It would affect Celeborn too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. That she's got to see that by putting this on him, she's putting the burden on him. Not just the burden of whether or not I tell, but just the burden of what the truth is, that this is a heavy thing and this is very unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
He had to have known that there was something unpleasant in her background, but he had no way of guessing it was this.
Right. Okay. So I'm now trying to put the pieces together. It really does seem like we just have an A plot and B plot with some extraneous details thrown in here and there.
That's
which
fine,
is
though.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with having only 2 subplots going on in one episode. I think that's perfectly reasonable. So for Act 1,
especially since this episode is a full cast ensemble thing.
Yeah.
We don't need the C plot so much as the party itself is the C plot, I guess.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the first scene in the main story is Sauron and Thurmgrethel leaving Angband. Then we get the arrival in Vinyamar montage. We get Galadriel's excitement. It's probably the first time we've seen her excited in a while. We've seen her kind of like content, like sadly content in Doriath, like when she was like doing the dance class thing and all that stuff. But she's greeted by Aredhel. Then we get the scene between Fingolfin and Turgon, where they kind of lay out they tell the audience what's going to happen, essentially. And then we have the dedication ceremony. All right, and that's the first act. Okay, Act 2. We have... Okay, so the things that are happening in Act 2 are Thurmgrethel and Sauron failing to create suspicions, Luthien talking Daeron out of being suspicious of the Noldor, and Galadriel's brothers starting to probe her for answers about why she has abandoned her, her life goals and stuff like that. What are you doing with your life? And what are you doing with your life conversation? Which is my very favorite conversation in the world to have.
Oh, yes. Everyone really enjoys being questioned on what they're doing with their lives.
I seem to have that conversation at least a few times a year.
Well, there's different ways people can go about doing that.
Well, when you get past 35, people start saying, all right, dude, you need to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. Okay. This isn't okay.
Yeah, I know. But the what I meant is that there are the people who are just like, oh, so what's up with you these days? What are you doing? And like, what are you working towards and all that, where it's very open-ended, casual. You're allowed to have it on your terms. And then there's the people who are like, no, seriously, you need to defend your life choices to me right now because I said so. And I'm going to ask very pointed questions about what's going on until I'm satisfied with your answers.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's a personality trait versus the...
Well, it's also how close the person is with you.
Right. I say it's more typically family that does the second kind.
Right. And how much your success or failure, reflects on them personally also has impact.
Right. So parents are allowed to care a little bit more about those things, I suppose. I just recall my poor sister being cornered at Christmas one year and grilled by 2 of our aunts about her choices of education. So she was going to college to get an English degree.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a cardinal sin right there.
Well, the deal is that most of my relatives are either engineers or doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So the presumption of what fields you would go into is very colored by that.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of, why would you do that? And what kind of job are you going to get with it? And how are you going to, support yourself in life? Which is maybe not surprising. But they cornered her and talked to her for at least an hour about this. And she was not okay with that. She was a little bit offended that they would have that conversation. And I feel like Galadriel is in a place now where people could have that kind of conversation with you're not living up to expectations and you're wasting your time and your life and making bad choices. And we're going to tell you so.
And you're bad and you should feel bad. Yeah.
Right. But that's not Finrod at all. So clearly Finrod can't be the one saying that.
What if it's Ordreth?
What was that? What was
Ordreth calling her out on her life choices. Angrod would make more sense.
I mean, it's there in the name.
Yeah. But yeah, Finrod would express concern for her. Eredhel would be like, "Well, I haven't seen you for a while." So Eredhel would just miss her. And Eredhel never got the whole wanting to have realms of your own thing anyway, so she wouldn't care about that. Angrod is in a kingdom where they needed more people and they needed more help. Essentially, that was what we set up as his dilemma last episode, right?
Right.
Yeah, and like his wife had become the person in command of the troops. So, like, if we might even be able to, in the scene where like she's getting questioned, have Thuringwethel listening in on it, and maybe like Ethlos says something that clues Thuringwethel in on this is a good person to capture. And that way, like we get this.
It all happens at once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Angrod could feel that he's in a perfect position to give Galadriel a hard time. He's her brother. Mm-hmm. Their parents aren't around. And he's just looking out for his little sister. And he's seen her in Doria. So he knew that she was depressed and morose and all that. Yeah. So he could be the one calling out like, "Oh, I see you finally have rejoined humanity, and except we're not humans, we're elves, and you showed up at this party, so great, you're done with that moping thing, right? And you can get to work helping us up in Dardanian," and Adelas can be there like, "Oh, that would be great, we would love your help." Like, she doesn't have to be the one giving her a hard time,
right?
Just kind of inviting her a little bit more, but still like, "Yes, we'd love your help." And what could she say that would get Thuringwethel's interest?
Like if she mentioned something about the big secret or something that like be an immediate flag for Thuringwethel, like just anything about secret.
She could ask her. Yeah,
she could say, "Let's get you out of Doria because I'm sure it must be weighing on you to have to be around the Sindar all the time. Come up to Rathan, and it's like much easier to live where we are."
Right.
And
somehow
easier to keep the secret or just something like that. Yeah. And Thuringwethel is like, "What secret do you speak of?"
Yeah, keeping so much from them must be wearing on you. Yeah, something like that.
You know what would be really cool to do, like after the scene or before, or like somewhere around the scene, would be to have a similar scene with Celeborn, like meeting his sister again, and them like being completely fine with each other's life choices because they've gone very separate directions.
Yes.
And like they could like be much more kind to each other about it.
Although they've probably been traveling with each other for a while.
No, because she arrived with the Green Elves. The Green Elves didn't go through Doria. The Green Elves are coming from Osirian.
So they went through Nen, whatever that place is. The
spider
town.
No. Of course not. They came around the south.
Oh, the south side of Doria.
So they wouldn't have to cross through the girdle, right? You would think.
Yep. That makes sense.
I mean, they could have gone through Doriath, but we don't have to. So we
Right.
can.
That's fair. Okay.
We can still give them a reunion.
Good, because that gives us another thing to put in Act 2.
And I like the idea of the contrast of Galadriel with her family and Celeborn with his family.
Yeah.
And we can then give Celeborn's sister a very different reaction after she finds out that Celeborn's marrying one of the Noldor later on.
Yeah.
Like
she should,
or it could be more the same. Like we can go from this conversation to whatever her reaction is later.
So if Galadriel is like looking uncomfortable in her conversation, and but Celeborn isn't like right near there, if they're like across a room or across a whatever outdoor space this is
area,
right? And he's like, he keeps like looking over at her because he's worried, and like having his sister pick up on that.
Okay, so yeah, she could notice, and up until this point, no one has like called out so Galadriel, I see you're spending all your time with this Celeborn guy. Like no one's had that conversation yet. So Celeborn's sister being the first one to pick up on it would be good. Because up until this point, it's been fairly limited contact, like beginnings of a friendship, but nothing that would make you give somebody a hard time.
Right. So Celeborn is reunited with his sister, though happy to see her. He seems distracted. She notices that he keeps turning concerned eyes towards Galadriel's uncomfortable reunion. Yep. Okay, cool. Good, because we needed at least one more scene in Act 2. Hey, guess what? We also need at least one more scene in Act 3. Now, granted, like, there's going to be a lot of filler content in this episode.
I was about to say, do I get my 5-minute party sequence?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's probably the opening of Act 3, because I would say that everything prior to Act 3 is happening outdoor. Like, there's more outdoor activities going on in the background.
Yes, so we'll have
this isn't
transitions.
This isn't the wrong place. Hang on. We still need at least one more scene in Act 2, because I just realized that I put one of the Act 3 scenes in Act 2 because I'm a dope.
What we might want to set up is like if we're going to like have the beginnings of an alliance or something between the Noldor and the Cinder that Finrod is trying to set up. That would like give him the reason to be visiting Doriath in episode 7 is like maybe he could be talking to Celeborn or to Mablung or Beleg or somebody from Doriath and saying like we should really form an alliance. Maybe I'll come by and we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So having, and this also sets up Finrod as also being in opposition to what Sauron's trying to pull here.
How would Finrod react to Sauron's music thing? Because he has that duel with Sauron later in the Beren and Luthien story.
Say that again.
So Finrod is going to have his music duel with Sauron in the Beren and Luthien story. So like, how would he react to what Sauron is doing at the Mouth Addathad? Would he like recognize it when he has the duel again, or would he like be part of stopping it this first time or something, or would he just be off doing something else at the same time?
Hang on. I'll be summoned. Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry.
I'm going to break the rule about not talking about people who are off screen and say that, yes, that came up, that we do want Finrod to react, to recognize that something's happening. He doesn't recognize that it's Sauron, but he recognizes what its effect is. So the only characters who are supposed to perceive the spell that Sauron does are Luthien, obviously, Finrod, and Maedhros. At least it's that we're going to show.
But like, would Finrod try to join in the stopping the evil thing?
That we can discuss that when Nick comes back, because I don't want you to have to repeat yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just said that's the only part that's been established is that yes, he does catch on that something's up.
Sorry about that. It's bedtime, apparently. Nessa has been exceptionally good today, which she's usually a very good baby on normally, but she was exceptionally good today. And I told my wife, I was like, "Oh man, if she were older, I feel like I want to take her out for ice cream. She was that good today." And my wife got really mad. I was like, "Don't you ever give her ice cream?" I was like, "Ice cream is delicious."
But it seems all the more delicious after not eating it all.
In China, sweets are unheard of. They're horrible things of evil, sweets. So, it's a cultural thing. Yeah, but anyway. There's something here. I did miss something. Okay, I got it. I'm just adding some additional detail into the thing here. We need to work out who exactly Thornwithel and Sauron talk to in Act 2.
So is this where we want to have Thornwithel talking to Círdan, or do you want to save that for Act 4?
I would save it.
Okay.
Hello. You're still muted. Oh wait.
Okay. All right, I'm back.
Sorry, it was bedtime, and
Yeah,
I had to go say goodnight to a little Valier. I like how I can keep referring to Nessa as the little Valier on Twitter, and everybody knows what I'm talking about.
I think that says something about your Twitter audience.
Could be. I should. Oh, were you still listening when Trish read out the tweet that I sent over to Dave?
Yes.
I was
yeah, about the splitting it into more seasons.
Yes.
Yeah. Give Dave a hard time for skipping out.
I don't know how far along you are in following this thing when when we were desperately fighting for this not to be the last season before Baron and Luthien, but that was like it was getting real.
I suspect that Corey Olsen decided to go along with our idea long before he said that.
Yeah,
he would go along with our idea.
I know,
to kind of just
agitate us a little
exactly bit. just to start things off and dangle it along as he could before he's like, yeah, of course, guys, we'll make it an extra season.
Well, I think
I'm not sure about that, but that was the impression I got.
I suspect that he was starting to cave fairly, because if you listen to like the first episodes, like the way that he talks about it is like that's completely ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And then over time it started to be like, well,
it's the nothing's happening, so we'll just throw it in the next season of Valerian and its realms. Like, we have nothing else to do, we'll just stick it in there because there's nothing going on. Like, that kind of became a running gag, and at that point it's like, okay, he recognizes that literally everything happens.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think at some point he recognized that there is actually a problem, and I don't think that. So I think there was a degree of him kind of humoring us at the beginning of the season. I think by now he's got to realize that
this is the right choice.
Yeah, that this was the way to go, because there's been several times when he's been like we just don't have time for that. It's like, yeah, you think we don't have time for that, Professor Olsen? Do you? Anyway,
yeah. Honestly, I think what sells it the most, or puts the nail in the coffin, or however you want to put that, is that humans have a very limited lifespan,
right?
And we introduce humanity in what is now next season.
Right.
So if we had tried to do that in this season, halfway through the season, all of the human characters we introduced would be on screen for one episode.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And as soon as you say that Haleth only lives for one episode, that kills the idea. Because no one wants to see Haleth only be a one episode character. Like that's just not.
Yeah. I mean, as it is, I have concerns that next season is going to turn into a bunch of individual mini arcs. Like it's going to turn into like 3 separate seasons.
Probably, but we'll worry about that later.
Yeah, well. Okay, so
no, I'm just saying.
if Luthien's talking Dairon down from being suspicious of the Noldor, he seems like a good target for somebody to have spoken to generate those suspicions, or at least heighten those suspicions.
Right.
Would we say that, now this is in Act 2, would we say that Thorin-Wethel or Sauron is talking to him? The reason that it makes a difference is because we just saw Thorin-Wethel listening in on Galadriel's conversation. So having her then immediately talking to Dairon might seem...
I would rather see it be Sauron here, because we're going to see Thorin-Wethel have multiple conversations through the rest of the episode.
Right.
Where Sauron's going to switch to musical tactics.
Right.
Fairly shortly. So let's not overdo Thorin-Wethel has a conversation with someone by doing it 5 times. Let's do Sauron this time, and then the next conversation will be Thorin-Wethel.
Is he a Noldor or a Cinda when he's talking to Dairon?
I don't know how many Sindar there are and how many Noldor there are, but the idea of being able to pull this off implies that the people he's talking to won't recognize that this is a stranger they've never seen before. So I'm much more comfortable with Sauron being a Noldo while talking to Sindar, because they wouldn't know any better.
Right. Although, like, there's plenty of Philadrim there.
There are, and Dairon might not know all the Philadrim, so it's not like he
probably doesn't.
Right, exactly. So I would say that those are the options, but it's a lot harder to impersonate someone who...
Yeah, the further away from them you are,
the better.
Yeah.
So when my dad was in college, he had a friend who was a con artist. And this con artist got himself into things for free all the time because he knew how to do that.
Yeah.
So, for instance,
I've worked in around salespeople for most of my adult life.
Yeah.
I've met this guy before.
Yes. So you know who this is. But anyway, he's a guy who decided he wanted to go to the Detroit Lions football game.
Mhm.
So he just walked in and he had a clipboard and he just walked up and down the sidelines during the game. So he just watched a professional football game for free on the field because he made it. He dressed and gave himself a prop to look like he belonged there.
Yep.
Same guy he was a frat brother of my father's. So he was like, oh, let's go to a party. It's like, oh, who's having a party? It's like, well, this hotel has wedding receptions all the time. Let's just go there. And so he would walk in. So, and the reason you go to a wedding reception, of course, when you're a college student is
free drinks.
Free beer. Exactly. So he would walk in and apparently this is the 1970s. So apparently it was a thing that you would have like a little matchbook made that has the bride and groom's name on it or something. That was like a party favor at the reception. So he would walk in, he'd palm one of those, figure out the bride and groom's name, go hang out at the party. If you're talking to somebody who's from the bride's side, you're with the groom. If you're talking to someone who's on the groom's side, you're with the bride.
Yep.
And you're like, oh yeah, how do you know him? Oh yeah, da 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 da. Anyway, they pulled it off multiple times. So my dad was like, yeah, it was great. I got to like dance with the bride and like all this stuff. You know, like he was at a wedding reception. No one knew who he was, but he got away with it.
Yeah.
They eventually got caught by the hotel staff.
Because they
came
show
back
up like every week. Yeah.
Yeah, if you show up for a couple weeks in a row, they're going to figure out that it's not legit. But that's how you pull off that kind of trick, apparently. I have never crashed someone's wedding, so I don't get that. But that experience leads me to suspect that Sauron is going to appear as a Noldo if he's going to talk to Dairon.
At my sister's wedding, the staff at the venue thought that my wife was trying to crash her wedding because there were two weddings going on at the same time. One was my sister getting married, and the other was a all Chinese wedding. And so there were Chinese people everywhere, and they and so like when my wife would come out of the bathroom and go to turn left into the area where my sister's wedding was, that people would be like, no, this way, over this way. And like loudly and slowly, the way you talk to somebody who's stupid and doesn't speak your language. And so that's a thing that happened. Only tangentially related. Anyway, so
the idea being that
So Sauron speaks to Dairon disguised as a Noldo. What does he tell him?
He could like walk up and like insult him or something, or be like, "Your instrument is stupid" or something. And
I mean, I guess that could drive towards the other thing. Yeah.
Some way of figuring out about his musical talent that he could then set up the who is better than who.
Yeah.
The goal from Sauron's point of view is to make the Sindar distrust the Noldor.
That's true.
So if he is himself a Noldo, he should act distrustful, suspicious. So so he could ask questions along the lines of, oh, is this your first time in one of the Noldor kingdoms? And like start being like, oh, so you wouldn't know anything about any of this stuff. Oh, okay, good, just checking. Like, just kind of be like, you're ignorant, right? Good, that's what I thought. Which would be very insulting, which would lead to the instrument thing later. Because I don't think we want to like start right off with that.
Yeah.
I think we start with Noldor are act superior and they are full of themselves and whatever, but it's really Sauron pretending to be a Noldo.
So one thing, like he could start off kind of being a little condescending about, like if Dairon's just like not quietly, but like playing, like if Dairon has just come out off of playing a set, and Sauron is basically like, "Oh, that's really cute, what you just did there." Like, he's a little condescending about it.
Or if he did something where, like, he asked Dairon who he was, and like Dairon was like, "I'm Dairon, the minstrel of Doriath," or something. It's like, "Oh, I've never heard of you."
Yeah.
And like that would, but then you could like see that would hurt Dairon's ego, and then you could like play off of that.
Yes. So the condescending thing, you must be a newbie around here, you're a hick who's never traveled outside Doriath kind of attitude, which would be very infuriating from the group of people who just showed up in Beleriand 2 years ago, 20. But the point is, the newcomers acting like they know everything, because it would be infuriating. So so something infuriatingly condescending, never heard of you, you're a nobody because you're stuck in your little place in Doriath. Sauron would kind of also seize the opportunity to talk to someone from Doriath, because he can't get past that girdle.
That's true.
So what would he want from Dairon at this stage?
He wants to know about the witch.
That's good, because if he starts questioning Asindo of Doriath the way Sauron would, while pretending to be a Noldo who's totally insulting Melian, Queen of Doriath,
right?
Like it serves both purposes. Yeah. Okay, so that's the thing. He's going to start asking questions, because until the girdle went up, he did not know that there was a Maya in Doriath. Once the girdle went up, he knew that some there was not just an elf.
Right. So here's the question. So he doesn't know anything about the power behind the girdle, or does he suspect that?
So the deal is that Sauron left the other Valar about the time that they went to Valar. Melian is associated with Irma, right?
Yeah.
So Irma was in Valinor the whole time.
Right.
So Melian and Sauron never met each other.
No, Sauron was with them in Valinor. He didn't leave Valinor until the discovery of the elves, until the war, right before the War of the Powers.
That's when he joined Melkor for Sirius. But
he's living in Valinor.
Okay, he's gone back and forth. Okay,
but,
good. I was making sure.
Here's what I would say. Now that I'm thinking about this, so you remember the werewolf confrontation?
Yes.
Episode 6 of season 2.
Yes.
The last time we saw Thingol in season 2. A couple of the werewolves escaped.
Right.
So they knew that there was a powerful female character there, probably an Ainu.
Right.
And
I would think that the fact that Melian is Queen of Doriath is no secret.
Right.
Like the name Melian shouldn't be a secret.
Right.
But I don't know that he knew Melian wasn't an elf.
Right.
Unless Melian was her name in Valinor and he knew her in Valinor, which I don't think he did.
But I think once the girdle hits, that he puts 2 and 2 together, he pieces it together with the information that he got from the fleeing werewolves. Yeah. And he's able to figure out, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm dealing with an Ainu here. And it wouldn't be inappropriate for him to use a term like sorceress.
Right. Okay. So he would, but he wants to know more because he's trying to figure out what her deal is.
Right. Well, if he can figure out what her portfolio is, essentially, like that gives him more. That gives him more tools, more ammunition against her. Yeah.
Right. Because Melian having married an elf and had a child is really unique and not something that he could have predicted and I knew would do. So
Dragons.
so there's questions he would have about what's going on here.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So if he starts questioning Dairon about Melian, Dairon, of course, loves Melian and thinks she's wonderful.
Yes.
And therefore is totally offended
Right.
that this random Noldo would say disparaging things about their queen. And when Luthien tries to be like, hey, you know, give them a chance, he's going to come back.
What he was saying about your mom.
Exactly. The whole, I'm not going to just stand by and let people insult your mother. Like, that's not happening here.
Yeah.
And
so, of course, she could say something to the effect of, my mother can take care of herself.
Yeah. And the whole
words from a random Noldo are not going to hurt my mother.
Right. And she can say, look, that guy's obviously never met the Queen of Doria. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. And yes, it was ignorant. He shouldn't have said that. But I'm more concerned about truth and reality. So I don't care about some stupid nonsense that someone who doesn't know what they're talking about would say. Like, you know, like yes, it was an insult, but it's out of ignorance. So the whole point of Sauron having played up ignorance about Dairon, like, oh, you're ignorant and I've never heard of you and all that, would now come back as Luthien saying, yes, this is proof that the person you're talking to wasn't worth talking to.
Right. Yeah.
Because he clearly doesn't know what's going on. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So it would be a good turnaround, I think.
Right. Whoa. We lost Rhiannon.
Oh, okay. Did that just happen?
I'm gonna send her an invite just for
so she can get back in.
Yeah, just in case she has trouble like last time. Give me 1 second here, because I know there was some difficulty. Did she send me? I forget. Oh, okay. All right. That's right. It was in the. Hang on. It was under the scripts that she sent that. Okay. Whoa. No, it's before that. Here it is. Copy email address. Invite. Paste. Invite. Okay. All right. I'm the only one currently on the forums themselves. So I wonder if her entire internet connection just zonked out. Give her a couple minutes and see what happens. We might wrap this up pretty quickly. The unity of place and time might have something to do with that, though. Rather than us just being awesome or anything.
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the entire episode happens in Vinyamar. There's only 2 plot lines. It all ties together really nice. And by the way, the host talked about it in a lot of detail and
depth.
That's
true. Yes.
To work out the conflicts for us.
Yes.
So yeah, given that, yeah, it's going swimmingly.
Yeah. Okay. I might be able to pull her up on like Google Chat or something like that. Let's see here. It's good to see Brian back on the boards.
Yeah, I hope he sticks around.
Yeah. Forums are still empty. Somebody's there. Oh. Somebody who was actually looking at the post that I made on the script thing.
Okay. Cool.
And at least one other person is watching this broadcast. Hello, other person.
Hello. I know we're super interesting right now.
This is the most entertaining thing on the internet. I'm here to tell you. I don't know. I'll grab some water. Let me just see here. No. So, while we're waiting, this is the newest part of my setup over here. For Christmas, my little brother bought me like all of the old X-Wing games.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen them. I know you're not really that big into video gaming, but this came out when we were kids. And
I'm sure I've seen it because I have friends who play.
Yeah. And but it doesn't work particularly well without a joystick. So I broke down and got one. And so we were playing it the other night, and it was a good time.
Cool.
Nothing like pretending you're Luke Skywalker in an X-Wing.
I don't disagree. I certainly liked Star Wars when I was in high school, and I had friends who liked Star Wars, so I know there were some video games that were associated with that. I can't remember now which ones. It sounds like it might be that one, but
I have a notification. Okay. All right. When did this happen? I think we might have to continue.
Okay. Yeah, if her connection died entirely, then I guess she can't come back. Oh wait,
Yeah.
she's on the board. She's on the forums now.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Okay.
So hopefully.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. What? I do think it's kind of funny that you can snoop on what people are doing on the forums.
All right, what they last visited.
Is this person reading the thing I just wrote? Yep.
Yay!
Hey!
Sorry about that. That wasn't my network cutting out. That was my computer freezing and crashing.
Oh, well, that's also frustrating. So welcome back.
I'm sorry. I cut out when we were talking about Sauron talking to Dairon about Melian trying to get information about her.
Okay, yeah. So basically, the conclusion that we reached there was that that he's going to be condescending towards Dairon. He's going to be condescending towards Melian. That like the questions that he's asking are kind of like the questions that somebody who wanted to break into Doriath would be asking. Which makes Dairon immediately suspicious. He goes to Luthien, who's kind of the person in charge of the situation. And she reminds him that, Melian is not in danger from this random Nuldo who is and his questions and his barbs. And, are you not confident in your skill as a musician? Like, obviously this dude is not, like, his opinion is not worth worrying about, and how he feels about the situation isn't worth worrying about.
So she diffuses the situation,
right,
by saying that the other guy's an idiot. Just leave it go.
right. But
More
also
or less.
she in regards to Dairon's suspicions, because Dairon's not just offended, he's also suspicious. And to answer that, she says, well, if something bad is going to happen, it's going to come out. And, and it doesn't, just because one of the Nuldo said something that made you uncomfortable doesn't mean that we get to treat them badly.
Remember, we're still guests here.
Right.
And don't let this one dude's actions reflect on the whole group. Let's keep our eyes open, but not worry about it. Kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that's Act 2, right?
Right. That's in Act 2.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. So Act 3. Now Act 3 is when the party starts, so I'm kind of okay with leaving it a little bit open and leaving a little bit of space in it. Basically, Sauron and Thuringwethil push a confrontation between Dairon and Maglor over who is the bestest musician. I think that this is done mostly through unnamed characters, probably.
Right, because the fan base should just be random Noldor and random Sindar.
Right.
So, all the Philothrum have heard of Dairon, and they think he's amazing, and they haven't even spent a lot of time with him.
Right.
But everyone knows he's Thingol's minstrel, and they feel like honor bound to defend him or something. And as far as Maglor goes, he's probably disliked less than the rest of his brothers.
Yeah.
By the rest of the group. He's a pretty acceptable Feanorian.
Yeah. He's the least objectionable Feanorian. Least likely to stab you in the back.
maybe Mydras could give him enough
Mydros
of
would
that.
at least wait until you turned around. That's fair.
Yeah, but the point is that the other random Noldor people of Turgan who aren't fans of Feanorians might still jump to Maglar's defense over his skill as a musician. I don't know. Like, does Glorfindel think Maglar is a great musician? Like, I don't know. I don't know what Glorfindel thinks about Maglar. Like, that's.
I mean, I think that the fact that the way that he's described, I would say it's undeniable.
Right.
That
and Noldor respects skill, so they'd respect
right,
his skill,
right,
even if they don't like him as a person.
Right, exactly. I think that there are a lot of people who, like, after Fingolfin's death, it's pretty clear that the rest of the Noldor respect Maedhros' ability as a general. Even though he's not the High King, Fingon's the one in charge, but the Nirnaeth is Maedhros' baby, right?
It is, but it helps that Fingon, who's Maedhros' best friend, is High King.
Yes,
because
that's true.
All Maedhros has to do is be like, so, Fingon, want to attack Morgoth? Let's do the thing.
Right,
and Fingon says, yes, I'm on board.
But
I'm not saying it's that simple, but
it's not just that Maedhros has an idea and Fingon is on board with it. Maedhros
plans the whole thing.
Creates the whole battle plan, right?
Yes,
and people go along with that, which
no, it's
so people recognize
I agree.
That despite whatever their personal misgivings are, they recognize and because there's so many superlatives in the Silmarillion, like this person is the best at this and that person is the best at that. There's no question about this. I think that amongst the Noldor, people are able to recognize those levels of skill, even if they don't like the person, which is kind of a quality that humans generally lack. Like if somebody doesn't personally like an actor, they are probably not normally going to be like, yeah, they're actually a fantastic actor. They're a terrible person, but they're a fantastic actor.
Right. I do think that we tend to put judgments on that, and it is maybe a Western civilization cultural thing. Because I think there's other cultures where that's not as big a deal. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about that, but I get the impression sometimes that it's not necessarily a universal human trait to be that way.
Okay.
But I obviously I'm part of this culture and I understand what you're talking about. So I don't know how generalized or not.
I mean, and it's different degrees. Like there are, I generally think that most actors are pretty terrible people. I can still recognize
that they're good actors.
Right. I generally think that most politicians are terrible people, and yet I'm able to recognize when one of them has an idea that I think is a good idea.
So that in particular is something where in American politics, you're supposed to like the politician, and in other countries, they all think their politicians are idiots and they hate them, but that's fine. Like that's expected.
Yeah.
Like the idea that you would actually support a guy and think well of him is foreign in some other countries. I mostly am thinking about France when I'm saying this. Like French attitudes towards politics is very full of not a malaise, but an expectation of like, well, of course the guys in charge are horrible human beings. We know that. Like, we're surprised there. So like that expectation of terrible behavior is not necessarily an acceptance of it. It's just well, duh.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, I mean, it happens all the time when somebody of one side or the other will be like, this politician did this terrible thing. I'll be like, yeah.
And the surprises who, right? So I think that's more of the typical French reaction, whereas in America we tend to act more scandalized by that kind of thing. But that's just Americans being scandalized and French people being not scandalized.
Which is weird because like we do in America have this impression that politicians lie all the time. Maybe it's just that we tend to think that the politicians on our side are the good guys though. So they clearly they're not the ones doing that. It's those guys that do that.
I don't know how people justify it, but it is a weird situation. I think it's because in general we prize honesty as a good trait. So if you're gonna say you should vote for this guy, you have to be like, because he's a good, honest, decent guy.
Yeah.
Whereas in other countries they don't
really
do
well
that.
with values dissonance. Particularly in America, we don't do very well with that at all.
And yeah, so I'm thinking maybe the Elvish culture is fine with that. For instance, the High King is a kinslayer.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's fine with that.
Yeah.
Even after the truth comes out, everybody's fine with that.
Yeah.
Why? Because he said, oh yeah, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done it.
Because he's the most qualified for the job.
That too. So like it's this thing where they're going to accept that people in positions of respect have done terrible things sometimes, and that's just, well, that happened. So yeah, the point is, I think that Mag has supporters among the Noldor who are not family when it comes to recognizing his musical skill.
Okay. So Luthien unifies the dueling instrumentals between the two musicians by dancing with both of them. Orodreth and Merrill are dancing also. Like obviously a dance party breaks out. And so, Orodreth and Merrill are dancing. They're apparently enjoying each other's company. Also enjoying each other's company, Celeborn and Galadriel. However, the dueling musicians thing is getting a little too raucous, and so they scoot. They go outside for an evening stroll. They pass
divers, swimmers.
Yeah, that. And I think cliff diving is probably the best thing, because that's really gonna hammer that one home.
Right. The audience will.
Everyone would see somebody falling off a cliff and you could even do a flashback to the scene from where they're falling off the cliff, and she's like, is that person going to die? And then it's like, oh no, they land in the water, and they're like, yay, that was fun, let's go again.
Yeah.
Right. Her reaction to what she's seeing is clearly not related to what she's seeing.
Yeah. And she kind of herds them away from it, which makes Celeborn kind of what is going on? What is up with you? And he starts kind of pressing the issue a little bit.
Inviting her to open up.
Right. Yeah.
Because it should be about invitation on his part and concern for her. It shouldn't sound like so what are you doing with your life questions from earlier. Right. It should sound like, so what happened back there? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
A long time ago, we had suggested that perhaps Celeborn would reference his own loss, because the hunter at Cuiven.
Didn't we do that?
We talked about it happening in this episode.
Oh, we talked about it happening in this episode. You're sure we didn't actually do that in a previous episode?
No.
Okay.
No, we did not.
Okay.
As far as I recall, we haven't done that.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and check episode 3 outline and see if there's something in there about that. But the idea was to have it here because it would relate to her talking about her mother's death. Right. And most elves don't have much experience with death. So if Celeborn does, he can be sympathetic in a way that most other elves would not get.
So, as part of the Act 4 break, I would say that we cut back to the guys inside who stopped playing, but there's still clearly some animosity there.
Yeah. So it's ended, but it's not resolved.
Right. And okay. Galadriel then opens up to Celeborn, reveals the kinslaying, blah, 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 no oath of secrecy will I bind you to, so on and so forth. Then we go back inside. Sauron's in a hidden vantage point where he starts playing his instrument, whatever it is. He plays, he starts to sing. The tensions in the room start to rise. Finrod is sensitive to this, and he's going to recognize this when he gets into his epic rap battle with Sauron later on. Maedhros starts having some flashbacks to being tortured in Angband.
To his capture.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, to the capture.
Because it was Sauron specifically used his magic to immobilize Maedhros.
Yes.
While he wiped out Maedhros' army, and that was how he was taken captive.
Right.
So that's what he's flashing back to, is the moment that he was immobilized. So he probably freezes.
Yeah.
I would. Yeah. And we've just done a little flashback with Galadriel earlier with her mom, so we could probably do the same thing where we would flash to a scene of that battle.
Yeah. Maglor, we see Maglor's reaction to what happens to Maedhros here. And then Luthien fixes everything. She begins to sing and dance. She turns Sauron's music into something harmonious. Dairon and then Maglor join in. And this time there's mutual respect. They're playing together. They're not playing opposite each other anymore.
Right. Now they're playing to support Luthien.
Right. And we can see them kind of, and as the more the music starts to shut Sauron down, the more celebratory that it gets. And we see them kind of like, and we see them kind of like getting into it with each other. Right.
Yeah, it's a jam session sort of thing where two very skilled musicians are enjoying being in each other's company.
Luthien puts her back up against Dairon and starts playing air flute.
I don't know that we need to do that. I know you are. Okay. But it's become a musical performance in a way that it so much of what we've been talking about has been competitions.
Right.
And this is not. This is a collaboration.
Right. Exactly.
Which would be exactly what Luthien's all about. So that's good.
Right.
And
it's got to be probably one of the most epic pieces of music that we've heard since the Einarlindelay, honestly.
Yeah. So good job with that, Phil.
Get on that,
you can come up with a song for Luthien to sing. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Sounds great. So then we cut back outside. We get Celeborn, who was initially horrified. He kind of gets a grip, promises to keep Galadriel's confidence. No one would be helped by him revealing the information. He's much more concerned about her. If she can't forgive herself, she's also going to be destroyed. So on and so forth, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the tag real quick, which could just be a simple
Bilbo and
Celeborn's
sister. Okay.
Yep.
So that would be a chance for Bilbo to be like, so that seems to have all gone well then, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so do you think there's any hope for this party to end well? Like, that would be the connection, right? That Bilbo would be trying to make. What's she gonna say? Like, that was then and this is now, or just because
she might have to reluctantly admit that there is some hope. Like she's not a fan of dwarves.
Fair enough.
But if that could work out, I guess it's possible. Anything's possible, you know?
Okay. Yeah. So, this would be great. So there was a question of why she would be pro reunion with dwarves when she's a green elf from Osirian.
Right.
Bilbo's conversation with her can be the seed of her talking to Thranduil later and being like, well, you should probably give this a chance, you know? Like, Bilbo could be the agent there that prompts her to have that point of view in a way that she might not have on her own. Although her own wisdom from having seen things play out in the past is, you know, it would be better if we at least tried, right?
Right.
So that's good. I think this sets us up for things we would want later with her and with the Fran.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
I think we might have a complete episode of television.
In like three and a half hours.
Not even 3.5 hours because we spent the first like 20 minutes chit-chatting.
That's true. So that's a first, I think.
That's a thing that happened. Okay, let me put it this way. Maria and I have probably come close to getting an episode done this quickly.
Not with but not with 3 people. Only with
Definitely
2
never
people.
with 3 people has an episode ever been finished this quickly. There was the one time that we did 2 episodes in one shot in like 5 hours.
Okay.
And it was just you and I. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's a thing that happened.
Well, good job, guys. So obviously, this went better than usual. Probably because they did our job for us.
Right.
But...
There's a few factors involved. Obviously, the hosts talked about this in a lot more detail than they typically talk about most episodes. It's all in one place. It's all more or less in one, like one continuous time slot. So there were only 2 major plots going on. So but I'll tell you something. This kind of goes back to what we talked about with, I think it was episode 2, was it? Where when we are the less text we're basing an episode on, the stronger the episode tends to be and the easier it tends to be to script out. Not because there's more room for us to work with it. And make things fit where they're supposed to. So I think that's another thing that we're going to have to bring up to the hosts when we start talking through script outlines at the end of the season.
I think that for one thing we could do differently to add to the script outlines is we could actually put the quote of the text that we're using for each episode at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
As like just a block quote.
Yeah.
So that we know what the episode's based on. And that'll make it easy to have that conversation of see how when it was based on like 2 sentences, we got this whole great episode.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we can do that. And that's one thing this project hasn't done a lot with since season 1. Because in season 1, the hosts actually would try to say something about having like reading assignments. Like, by the way, what we're talking about now is the Aino Lindale, and therefore it's this. And now we're in the Valaquenta, so you should read that.
Yeah, it's a lot more vague now as to what we're dealing with.
Yeah, so actually pulling quotes out would probably be helpful to kind of contextualize some things.
That's going to be nice until we get to the Of Valerian and its Realms episode, which is just that whole chapter.
We might have to leave out or only pick one thing from it.
Right.
Because most of what we're showing isn't actual text. In that one, you're right. That one is very much we had to create a storyline.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one might be hard to do, but some of these I think we can put quotes above.
Yeah, and go on.
I think the Merathadathad piece in the Silmarillion is like a page and a half.
Yeah,
it's like 2 paragraphs or something about it.
Right. So we can pull out one paragraph and make that our block quote. Ta-da, we did it.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna end the broadcast here. Is anybody watching this? If you're watching this live, thanks so much. It's been a blast, and we'll see you guys. I guess we're planning on 2 weeks from now.
Okay. And is Friday night still gonna work for you?
That's still gonna work.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, because I believe that's the day after the 4th of July, July 5th.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna check the calendar and see.
Well,
but
I'm not.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going anywhere. And it would be a good opportunity to kind of catch up a little bit.
Okay, I'm available on July 5th.
Yeah. Me too.
I just wasn't sure if everybody was. Okay, so we'll say July 5th, Friday evening for the next one to do episode 6.
You know what I'm realizing is that I'm really hoping that we don't wind up talking script outlines in like early September, because
That's when you'll be in China.
I will be in China, and that will be. I mean, they have internet there, but
But you'd rather do that when you're here. Well, send me the dates for your trip, and I'll try to count down sessions, and I'll see if we can